American Comics, opening sign in Accelerator. Chapter 51. Levi's ambition to build Academy City. After hearing so much, Levi's finally reacted. After a long time, Nick Fury just wanted him to realize that his power caused the fear of the World Security Council. That's why he, who should have been a hero, was hidden. Certainly, Levi's doesn't care what the hero's name is. If it wasn't for Professor X's orders, he wouldn't shoot even if many people died. And hearing him say that, Nick Fury immediately shook his head. No, Mr. Vice, S.H.I.E.L.D is not afraid of your power, because power varies from person to person. Even a power as terrifying as a nuclear bomb can still be the pinnacle of peace in the world. So great power is never scary, and I'm sure Mr. Vice is the same. Levi's was a little surprised to hear this, but he didn't expect Nick Fury to have this kind of awareness. Also, like Captain Marvel, who has great power but chooses to protect the Earth. Maybe that's what made Nick Fury feel this way. Clap clap clap! Exclamation mark. Levi's applauded. Director Nick Fury's eloquence is amazing. No, I'm just stating the facts, Nick Fury said with a serious face without blushing and heartbeat. Those who didn't know thought he was a righteous partner, and Levi's wouldn't trust him so easily. So, it's the people of the World Security Council who are afraid of my power, so to speak. Nick Fury nodded. Then what are they going to do? Are they trying to deal with me? Levi's smiled disdainfully and said, they can't even deal with Hulk, so why deal with me? To put it uglier, he could easily destroy those people in the World Security Council, so why would those people dare to take action against him? Nick Fury also heard what he meant, which made his ability to Levi's improve a lot. Even if the World Security Council is not afraid, then there is probably nothing in the world that can make him afraid. Such a person, if pressed, would be an unimaginable disaster for the world. Thinking of this, Nick Fury couldn't help but smile and said, don't worry, Mr. Vice, I have already suppressed this matter, and they will not deal with you lightly. Oh. Then what? Levi's folded his arms and looked at him calmly. So far, the positions of the two sides have seemed to be reversed. In the beginning, Nick Fury wanted to use the World Security Council to suppress Levi's, but he didn't want Levi's not to eat him at all. This made his next remarks somewhat inappropriate. Mr. Vice, we have a position for you. With that, Nick Fury took out a document and put it in front of him. Levi's picked it up and looked at it. Avengers. He looked at the profile with some surprise, but he didn't expect Nick Fury to want him to join Avengers. And he was the first to join. This is a department just created by S.H.I.E.L.D. As you can see, you are the first to join. Now the whole world is getting more and more chaotic, such as hate and the Hulk. There are even terrifying aliens in unknown places, so the Earth needs those of you who have special abilities to protect. Nick Fury explained with a serious look. Levi's thought for a moment and smiled. That is, S.H.I.E.L.D provides protection for me, and I have to work for you? No, it's a collaboration. Oh? Corporation. So what can you do for me? Don't talk about the World Security Council. I don't care about those people at all. Levi's words are clear. If you want him to join Avengers, you have to show practical benefits. Joining the Avengers is also a good thing for him. After all, if you join Avengers, you can get in touch with more people with special abilities, which makes it easier for him to sign in. Nick Fury is very happy to hear that he has no objection to joining the Avengers. Well, S.H.I.E.L.D's information can be shared with XMan, and various resources can also be used by XMan. Director Nick Fury really has the guts. I said yes. Levi's nodded in satisfaction. It can be said that what Nick Fury promised is exactly what he wanted. Once there is the support of S.H.I.E.L.D, then XMan can develop rapidly, which is very important for XMan. In fact, he has always had an ambition to create a city that belongs to Mutant. Controlling Dr. Campbell was also intended for this purpose. As long as you can build machines that make ordinary people mutants, it's easy to build a mutant city. Definitely, if you want to achieve these various resources are essential. That's one of the reasons why he agreed. Nick Fury was finally relieved to see that he agreed. Facing Levi's, he just felt more difficult to deal with than some old guys. Chapter 52. Professor X's mission. As expected of that sentence, in the face of absolute power, there is no way to start any conspiracy and tricks. Since you agreed, Mr. Vice, then sign this agreement. Strike while the iron is hot, and Nick Fury handed him the agreement to join the Avengers. Levi's didn't talk nonsense either and signed the agreement directly. Mr. Vice, sign this agreement. You will be a member of the Avengers from today. If the organization has any mission, don't worry. If you have anything, just come to me. Levi's agreed very generously, and he didn't say the next sentence of definitely, that is, it depends on his mood whether to go or not. If you have to find him for anything big, he doesn't have that spare time. Coming out of the office of the head of the stewed egg, Polaris hurried over. Vice, what did you talk about? It's just that the head of the braised egg invited me to join his Superman Boy organization. Levi's smiled. Head of braised egg? Hearing this name from his mouth again, Polaris couldn't help but look back at your Nick Fury in the office, and it really looks like a marinated egg. You promised. Definitely. That's fun, isn't it? Levi's doesn't explain much. Okay then. Polaris looked indifferent. Anyway, she was very agree with Levi's decision. Return to Mutant College. Levi's told Professor X about his collaboration with S.H.I.E.L.D. Good boy, you did a great job. After listening to it, Professor X showed a gratified smile, and also sighed at Levi's sensibleness. At a young age, he knew that he was thinking about mutants' future, and he had already taken action for it. He really didn't know what words to use to praise this child. Since Levi's awakening ability a month ago, he has done several big things that benefit Mutant. For example, he rescued Polaris, saw through the Hellfire Club's conspiracy, and found the 4th level mutant, and stopped Magneto's conspiracy to save the little naughty, and so on. As you can see from these things, Levi's has what it takes to lead the X-Men. Thinking of this, Professor X said softly, Vice, I have seen your ability, so I want you to be in charge of X-Men. What do you think? What? Levi's was stunned for a moment when he heard this, but he didn't expect Professor X to let himself take his place. Professor, you are the backbone of the X-Men. How can the X-Men do without you? And I'm still so young. He can't be bothered to take charge of X-Men's affairs. That's too much trouble. Professor X shook his head. It doesn't matter. I'm old. I'll leave one day, and X-Men today also needs a good leader. Then, well, I promise. Hearing Professor X's words, Levi's thought about it and sighed and agreed. After all, Professor X is not too young. After working hard for Mutant all his life, it is time to take a break. When Professor X saw his promise, he immediately gave a relieved smile. Later, Professor X called the X-Men over and told them of the decision. Today's X-Men are only Jean Grey, Cyclops, Storm and Wolverine who have left the academy. The others are either students or not yet. In short, today's X-Men is only beginning to take shape. Several people had different expressions after hearing Professor X's decision. I'm okay. Storm and Jean Grey were able to see Levi's leadership ability and powerful strength in their last mission to rescue Little Naughty, so they had no objection to Levi's being their leader. Only Cyclops didn't say a word. After all, it was a little unacceptable for him to let a person who had just awakening ability, and one of his former students, become the leading boss. Fortunately, Logan has left, otherwise, he will definitely stand up against it. Scott, do you have any questions? Professor X asked without saying a word. Cyclops shook his head with a complicated expression. No, I have no problem. I also know that I am not enough to lead X-Men to create a better future, so I agree. Hearing these words, Levi's was a little surprised. He didn't expect him to say such a thing. According to his understanding, Cyclops would not agree, but he did not expect that he would not only agree, but also face up to his own shortcomings. Vice, I hope you can lead X-Men to become stronger. Cyclops looked at him seriously. Levi's was stunned for a moment, then smiled confidently. Don't worry, Mr. Scott, I will definitely do it. Seeing this, Professor X immediately showed a gratified smile. It seems that he has a successor. He couldn't help but want to see the glorious future of Xavier's school. Chapter 53 S.H.I.E.L.D's first mission. Leaving Professor X's office, Levi's and Cyclops came to the battle room together. Now that Professor X has handed over the X-Men to him, he must sit on the top of the list. Mr. Scott, Mrs. Olo, Mr. Kin, although the professor gave me the X-Men, the file size of the X-Men is still up to you. After all, I don't care about it. Familiar. Levi's shrugged. Compared to letting him handle everything, he prefers to be a hands-off shopkeeper. If there are important matters, it will be up to him to deal with it. Definitely, we will help you in this regard. Storm smiled and agreed. She had seen Levi's get stronger bit by bit with her own eyes, so she also trusted him very much. Yeah. Levi's nodded with satisfaction. By the way, I wonder what happened to the Strucker family? After returning to the academy for so many days, he still hadn't cared about the situation of the Strucker family. The piano on the side said, Mr. Reed and Miss Catherine became the teachers of the college. As for Lauren and Andrew, they became students, and their situation is not bad. Oh, that's good. Is Mr. Reed's ability problem solved? Reed's ability is very dangerous. It's okay not to activate it. Once activated, it will be out of control and may hurt others. It has been resolved, and now he can initially control ability. Cyclops on the side answered his question. That's good. Levi's touched his chin and said, next, I plan to expand the number of X-Men. After all, there are too few X-Men people today. Today's X-Men and him are only 5 people in total. If you remove Wolverine, who has left, they're down to 4, which is too few. Storm and Cyclops glanced at each other. We agreed. They have also thought about adding members to X-Men, but very few have the ability to join. Who are you going to let in? Storm asked curiously. My current candidates are all here. Let's take a look. Levi said he tapped his fingers in the air and used molecular manipulation to instantly create tables with exactly what he had in mind to join the X-Men. Although I have seen this scene of creating something out of thin air last time, it is still a bit shocking to see the 3 of Storm again. 3 forms flew in front of them, and they picked them up and looked at them. Name, Lorna. Code name, Polaris. Ability, Electromagnetic force. Recommended reason. The information of each person is clearly written in the tables, and there are even reasons for the recommendation. And his list of recommendations includes Polaris Lorna, Shadowcat Katie, Blink Clarice, Naughty Mary, Reed Strucker, Iceman Poppy, Burning Man John and Colossus, to name a few. It can be said that he has considered all future X-Men members. Definitely, many of the mutants' abilities in the Academy have not yet grown up. For example, the Strucker twins can't perfectly control their own power. Therefore, this table is only used as a reference. Now only Polaris can really join. In fact, Thunderbird should also be eligible to join, but unfortunately he is not in the Mutant Academy, and can only make arrangements later. Then the four discussed it. The decision was made to let Polaris join first, and the others would take some time. They will also be trained accordingly. In this way, I believe that X-Men will soon grow up. For the next period of time, Levi's was more leisurely. Cyclops and the newly joined Polaris will take care of the college affairs, while he and Magneto's laboratory are also preparing one after another. This time, with the resources of S.H.I.E.L.D, it was much easier for them to prepare. But since they used S.H.I.E.L.D's resources, Nick Fury certainly won't let himself suffer. This is not the first task S.H.I.E.L.D gave Levi's game. On Helicarrier, in the S.H.I.E.L.D. director's office. Director Nick Fury, tell me, what is the mission this time? Levi's asked straight to the point when he came to the office. Nick Fury is no bullshit either. You should know Tony Stark. Tony Stark. I don't think anyone in New York doesn't know about this super-rich second generation. Levi's shrugged. He said he not only knew, but knew Tony Stark very well. But then again, since Nick Fury mentioned his words, did that happen? Maybe. His words almost left Nick Fury at a loss as to what to say. I want to say that Tony Stark is missing. Just 3 months ago, the military sent people to search for a long time and couldn't find it. So, my job is to get this dude back? Levi's asked rhetorically, interrupting his tirade. That's right. Nick Fury nodded. No problem. I'm going on this mission. This task is not difficult for him at all, because he knows the famous Iron Man, who is now building Mark I in a cave in Afghanistan. It was too easy to find him. Chapter 54. Sign into Helicarrier, the last element. Leaving Nick Fury's office. Instead of rushing to find Tony Stark, Levi's used telepathy to connect the Cuckoo sisters. Is Esm here? I'm here. Esm responded quickly. Esm is one of the 5 Cuckoo sisters. Definitely. It is not clear if she is a big sister. I'll send you some money. You quickly buy some Stark Industries stock. How much can you buy? Understand. Clear. Esm didn't have any doubts, and simply agreed. Immediately afterwards, Levi's used electromagnetic force to incarnate a hacker, manipulated accounts that the bank had not used for many years and some black accounts, transferred all the money in it, and handed it over to the 5 Cuckoo sisters. His purpose for doing so is self-evident. Since there is such a good opportunity to be kidnapped by Tony Stark, it is definitely going to make a lot of money. Although he is not short of money, who would think too much money? After all this, Levi's is ready to travel to Afghanistan to find Tony Stark. But before that, he didn't forget to check in on the Helicarrier. Ding. Has the host checked into the Helicarrier? Sign me in. Ding. The sign-in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability and origin substance, with 100 experience points. It turned out to be the end element material? Exclamation mark. Levi's, who was prompted by the system, was a little surprised. He didn't expect that this time he signed in. He actually got the bug ability of the last element. Why do you say this ability bug? Because this super ability can create substances that do not exist in this world at all. It is not that they have not been discovered, but substances that do not exist in this world completely. And in the process of creation, all physical and chemical properties can be assigned to this substance. That is, if you create a piece of end element matter, set it to the property of vibranium, then this piece of end element matter is as hard as the real vibranium, and possesses all the special properties of vibranium. If set to the properties of adamantium, it can be as sharp and hard as Wolverine's claws. Definitely, while they do have the vibranium and adamantium shapes and properties, they definitely don't get those two metals if they're tested. And this setting has no constraints, that is to say, the properties of the last element can be arbitrarily set. Even it is not impossible to make a piece of last element material have the properties of vibranium and adamantium at the same time. For example, the white wings created by Emperor Kakian using the end element material can be used in applications such as flight, defense, strike, slash, gale, and shockwave. It also converts sunlight passing through its wings into lethal light. It can be said that if this ability is placed in the hands of a scientist, it is much more powerful than vector operations. Because it is possible to create end element matter of any property, it is simply more powerful to engage in scientific research. Just like Tony Stark, if he gets the ability of the last element, no one knows where his upper limit is. It can be said that the last element is a very creative ability. As long as your creativity is strong enough, you can play infinite possibilities. Levi's, who got this ability, was in a good mood. He had already thought about how to use this ability. In a good mood, he used the space to move and came to Afghanistan in an instant. Then, under his telepathy, he soon found the cave where Tony was. Beep beep! Exclamation mark. As soon as I entered the cave, I heard a beep beating. Levis saw that Tony was assembling his first steel armor. Maybe it was because he was too focused, so Tony didn't notice him behind him. Hey, need help? The sudden sound made Tony shudder and stop beating. He turned around and saw a young man sitting on a box beside him looking at him with interest. Who are you? Tony was very wary of this sudden appearance because the gate in the cave is still tightly closed. So how did this person come in? I'm a mutant, and I heard that Tony Stark, the famous playboy, was kidnapped here, so let's see if I need help. Okay? Do you want to go out? Levis grinned. Tony was a little excited when he heard this, thinking how much he wished someone could rescue him when he woke up from the cave, no matter who it was. He is willing to pay any price for it. However, after 3 months, his impetuous mentality has been completely smoothed out. He didn't fully trust the stranger in front of him. What do you want? Tony asked bluntly. It's very simple. Just give a few $100 million USD. Levis said loudly. $500 million USD. As long as you can save me safely from here, then all the money is yours. For it. Levis was a little surprised when he heard his words, thinking that he would be rejected if he opened his mouth, or that he would be given a maximum of $100 million USD. Unexpectedly, Tony Stark gave $500 million USD as soon as he opened his mouth. Sure enough, it's kind of rude. What? Not enough? Tony raised an eyebrow. Enough is enough. Then let's go. Levis jumped off the box and walked over to Tony, ready to use the teleportation to take him back. For him, just using a space move can make $500 million USD in vain, and there is nothing more profitable than this. Chapter 55, another $100 million. However, Tony shook his head. Don't worry now, you should be able to protect me. Is that so? I'm adding $100 million USD. Seeing his hesitation, Tony added another $100 million without hesitation. In his view, as long as it is something that money can solve, it is not a problem. Although a few $100 million USD is a lot, it is nothing compared to his life. Moreover, considering the wealth of his Stark industry, a mere few $100 million USD is simply trivial. No problem, then I'll be your bodyguard once. Levis shrugged. Originally, he was prepared to agree, but since Tony took the initiative to add more money, he definitely had no problem. Tony didn't speak anymore, turned and tapped his steel armor again. Levis sat bored watching him banging. After a while, the iron door in the cave was opened, and a middle-aged man walked in. Stark, who is this person? The middle-aged man asked with a frown when he saw Levis. Ethan, this person is here to save us, but I still hope to finish our creation. Tony pounded and explained without looking back. Hello. Ethan held out his hand to Levis. Hello Dr. Ethan, just call me. Levis smiled and stretched out his hand. He still admired Dr. Ethan. It can be said that without Ethan, there would be no Iron Man. Almost done. Come help. Tony yelled. It is good. Dr. Ethan nodded, then helped Tony get started in his steel armor. And suddenly there was one more person in the cave, and was soon discovered by terrorists. What to do? They're coming in. Ethan was a little anxious. Tony frowned when he heard someone shouting outside the cave door, and then he looked at Levis beside him and said, you should have a way to stop them from coming in. Definitely no problem. Levis waved at the cave door, and then saw a large amount of ice covering the iron door of the cave. As a result, it is almost impossible for terrorists outside to open the iron door. Tony gave him a deep look at this, then went back to his own business. Dr. Ethan was stunned when he saw this scene. He didn't expect that someone could make ice at will, which was completely different from his scientific concept. Don't be in a daze, Dr. Ethan, he's a mutant, Tony explained. After Ethan heard his words, he suddenly realized that it was Mutant who could explain it. Soon, Tony's steel armor was dressed. Although it looks like an iron lump, its power is not as good as underestimated. Come on, let's go out. Tony, who was wearing a suit of armor, spoke hard. Why is it so troublesome, and you want to rely on this iron box to get out? Levi sat on the wooden box and propped his chin board. With this armor, I will eliminate those terrorists. Definitely. Don't worry, I will give you a lot of money, I promised you. Okay then. Levi spread his hands and said it doesn't matter, since he wants to toss, let him do it. Wearing heavy armor, Tony came to the iron gate of the cave, and his flamethrower shot out flames, trying to melt the ice on the iron gate. However, a minute later, Tony was stunned to find that the ice cubes showed no signs of melting. He turned his head and looked at Levi's in disbelief. Levi's almost laughed when he saw this. Tony's proud steel armor didn't expect to encounter an embarrassing thing at the beginning. Even the ice couldn't melt. Certainly, the ice that he created doesn't melt so well. To keep Tony Stark from being embarrassed, he waved his hand, and the ice on the iron gate melted away instantly. Many terrorists have already been ambushed outside the door. Tony walked out fearlessly. Bang bang bang! Exclamation mark. As soon as he walked out, countless bullets hit him. However, when these bullets hit the steel armor, they all bounced back, causing the terrorists themselves to be injured. Then Tony started spraying flames, and in the narrow passage, these terrorists could only escape backwards. Ethan, follow me carefully. Tony turned his head and shouted, then killed the terrorist. Levi's followed behind them. Needless to say, Tony's steel armor is only half finished, but its power is not bad. Terrorist bullets were useless against him. Just rely on a pair of flamethrower to kill out of the cave. However, there were more terrorists outside the cave, dozens of them, and Tony was directly forced back into the cave by the powerful firepower network. Tilda. Tony opened the mask, gasping for breath. Although the bullets couldn't hurt him, the power attached to the bullets also made him uncomfortable. Chapter 56, Taking a Hurt. Tony Stark. At this time, Ethan leaned against the wall of the cave with something wrong. Tony glanced at him, instantly attracted by the bright red clothes on him. Ethan, you're hurt. Tony came to him in a hurry. It seems that I can't leave here with you, Ethan said with a pale face. No, we agreed, we will leave together. Tony was a little excited and a little guilty, because he didn't protect the other party well. Levi's was also a little surprised to see Ethan's wound. When did he get shot? Could it be a stray bullet bounced off Tony's armor? That's really bad luck. I said, can you guys stop looking like you are parting from life and death? Hearing his words, Tony immediately turned to look at him. Can you save him? Definitely, but I'm adding 500 million USD, as long as you can save him, Tony said without hesitation. When Levi's heard the words, he was at a loss for words. He just wanted to say that Dr. Zin was already determined to die, and it was up to him to choose whether he wanted to live or not. Unexpectedly, Tony directly dumped another 500 million USD. Does he seem like such a poor man? But having money without making money is a fool. No problem. Levi's agreed, and then regardless of Ethan's willingness or not, he directly forcibly shot and patted his chest where he was shot. Okay, remember that you already owe me 1.1 billion USD. Is that all right? Tony's face is stunned. Just take a shot like this? He had never seen such treatment. However, when he looked at Ethan, he saw that the shot from his chest had disappeared, as if he had not been shot. Levi's used molecular manipulation to directly break down the bullet in Ethan's body, and then created the blood molecules and protein and fat molecules needed by the wound to repair the wound. It's a repair at the molecular level, so it doesn't look like it's been shot. Tony looked at Levi's with a bewildered expression, completely unexpected that he would have such an incredible ability. Okay, don't look, those terrorists are coming in. Levi's pointed to the outside of the cave. When these terrorists saw that Tony didn't show up for a long time, they all surrounded him. I'm running out of reactor energy in my chest. What will depend on you next? Tony looked at the energy of his armor. It was completely unable to support him to kill these terrorists. It's so easy. Levi's pouted and came to the entrance of the cave. When the terrorists outside the cave saw someone coming out, they immediately picked up their guns and fired wildly. Tony was a little anxious when he saw him go out just like that. However, before he could say anything, he saw countless bullets all standing still in front of Levi's. By the time the terrorists outside the cave ran out of bullets, a lot of bullets had piled up in front of Levi's. Give it back to you. Levi's waved his hand, and the next moment all the bullets were returned under the control of electromagnetic force. For a while, there was screaming outside the cave. When everything was settled, the outside of the cave had become silent, and there was no sound of a single person. Although Tony didn't go out to see it, he could still imagine how tragic it was outside the cave. Ethan, let's get out of here. Tony supported the weak Ethan and went out. Don't be so troublesome. Levi's grabbed Tony and Ethan. Let me see, the seaside villa should be here. After determining the location, he launched the space move. The next moment, the three were already in a luxurious villa. Suddenly coming from the cave to a villa, Tony and Ethan were a little stunned. What happened? Where are we? Tony looked around with a dazed expression, only feeling that this villa hall was a little familiar. Isn't this your villa? Levi's shrugged, then poured himself a random bottle of red wine from the wine rack on the side. My villa? Tony was still a little confused. They were still in the cave just now, but they were told that they had gone home. It is impossible for anyone to believe such a ridiculous thing. But after he looked around carefully, he found that this was really his villa. He couldn't even know where he lived. Okay, my task has been completed. Remember to put 1.1 billion USD into this account, and I will leave first if I have something to do. Levi's drank a glass of red wine, then left an account and disappeared. Tony was still a little stunned, but he quickly realized that first he took off his heavy armor. Then I called the secretary, Pepper. Soon, a blonde beauty with slightly red eyes hurried to the seaside villa. Tony saw that although she had a lot of things to say in her heart, she couldn't. After these 3 months, he was a little less frivolous and a little more calm than before. Tony, why are you suddenly in the villa? We are looking for you everywhere. Little Pepper said that the tears could not stop flowing down. Don't worry, I'm back safely, Tony said and opened his arms. Seeing this, Little Pepper couldn't help throwing herself into his arms. But after seeing the magnet on Tony's chest, Pepper became worried again. Tony, let's go to the hospital. No, I don't want to go to the hospital right now. Don't make trouble, Tony. You have to go to the hospital now. Pepper's attitude was very firm. Nothing is necessary. I was imprisoned for 3 months and all I do now is eat an American cheeseburger and the other. No, Pepper cut him off, and she guessed that Tony had just come out of hell and must be trying to throw a party again. But this time she was wrong. Tony at the moment is no longer the playboy he used to be. The other is to hold a press conference. Tony looked at her seriously and said. Little Pepper was obviously stunned when he heard his words. Chapter 57 Lauren's Gift. An hour later, Pepper is ready for the launch. Because this was Tony Stark's first press conference 3 months after he disappeared, all the media who got the news flocked. In addition, Tony also instructed Pepper to transfer $1.1 billion to an account. In Mutant College, Levi sat with Polaris and Clarice in a spacious living room watching the news, which was Tony Stark's presentation. Vice, your mission today is to save this person? Polaris asked curiously. That's right. Levi's nodded with a smile. Tony Stark, the most famous playboy in New York, why are you going to save him? Vice, the little naughty asked inexplicably while eating snacks. I'm now the agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Rescue Tony Stark is my mission today, and I have to thank this mission for making me $1.1 billion. Levi's grinned. $1.1 billion? Exclamation mark. When everyone heard this number, they couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise. You must know that they usually have no source of money, and they have to save pocket money for a long time to go shopping. It is unbelievable to hear such a large number suddenly. Seeing everyone so surprised, Levi's was a little proud. Don't pay too much attention to this number. After all, Tony Stark has money, and the money is just a trifle to him. Hearing him say that, everyone calmed down. But even this is unbelievable. I made $1.1 billion just by going out and doing one mission. The little naughty is still a little unbelievable, and always feels that the money is a bit unreal. Levi smiled and shook his head. It's only this time. It won't be easy to meet such a bad guy next time. It's also a good thing that this time I met Tony Stark, who is not bad for money, otherwise he wouldn't be able to extort so much money. Tony would have vomited blood when he knew that Levi's was the one sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. to rescue him. By the way, after earning so much money this time, I decided to increase the Academy's equipment and scholarships. How about taking a score test? The top 10 will be rewarded with $10,000. It is natural to have money to use. Now that he has become the leader of XMan, it is also necessary to contribute some to the Academy. Speaking of which, he also moved into a bigger room after becoming the leader of the XMan, which is where they are now. Compared to the previous small room, this place is much more spacious. When everyone heard his decision, they all agreed. Levi's was all smiles, because this time he not only made $1.1 billion, but also a large number of shares in Stark Industries that were mostly scattered outside. As far as these shares are concerned, it is not comparable to $1.1 billion. It can be said that from now on, he is the second largest shareholder of Stark Industries. The other side. When Tony saw Phil Coulson and learned that Levi's was the man S.H.I.E.L.D. sent out to rescue him, his face darkened. At the moment Tony had a sentence in his heart that MMP didn't know whether to say or not, but when he thought about Levi's powerful and mysterious ability, he thought about it and still didn't say it. Now that the money has been given, he can't do anything to ask for it back. In the end, I could only admit that I was unlucky. The next day, Levi's is usually ready to go to class, although he has become the leader of XMan, but the class still has to be taken. This is what Storm said. After all, he had been absent from class for a long time. If he didn't go to class, the consequences would be very serious. As a result, Levi's had to obediently come to class. Hey, is here. As soon as she came to the classroom, she was pulled by the enthusiastic Lauren to the seat next to her. How is Lauren's super ability control recently? Levi's looked at this enthusiastic, cheerful, blonde girl with a hot body and smiled. Well, I've been training very hard recently. By the way, I'll show you this, she said with her hands on the table and closed her eyes. A magical scene happened, and a white stone statue slowly appeared on the table. The statue is very delicate, and it can be seen that it is exactly what Levi's looks like. Lauren opened her eyes with great satisfaction at her masterpiece. How is Vice? Well, very good. Levi's smiled and nodded in praise. It seems that you have worked really hard, Lauren, to be able to use molecular structure to create such a stone statue. With his approval, Lauren smiled very happily. You must know that she has worked hard for a long time to create this statue, and now it seems that it is worth it. Vice, this statue is for you. Oh, thank you so much. I will keep it well. Levi's smiled, and then the statue disappeared instantly with a wave of his hand. Lauren froze for a moment. Huh? Where did the statue go? Don't worry, I've put it in the most conspicuous place in my room. You can go to my place to see it when you have time, he explained with a smile. You must know that his spatial movement is not tight, but he can move himself, and he can move objects to any position. Chapter 58 Sign into Shadowcat, Travel Through? What are you talking about? Can I sit here? While Levi's was chatting with Lauren, Shadowcat Katie came to him. Just a casual chat. Levi's laughed. Suddenly he was stunned for a moment, because he realized that he didn't seem to have signed into Shadowcat, right? Unexpectedly, There was a fish that slipped through the net beside him, which really made him a little embarrassed. But it just happened that I haven't signed in today, so I signed in on Shadowcat. Ding. Did the host check in on Mutant Shadowcat Katie? Yes. Ding. The sign-in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability traversal, and the experience value is 100 points. Cross? That's right. Even if everyone thinks of the ability to cross. Remember that when Shadowcat uses this ability, it can transform itself into atomic components and pass through any obstacle. In this state, she can temporarily integrate with the object without interfering with each other until her body passes through the barrier, and when being attacked, including missiles and quantum weapons can't cause damage to her. The most important thing is that she can use this ability to send human consciousness back to the past or future. This is very buggy. If she is dissatisfied with her future, she can directly go back to the past and change the future. And the traveling that Levi's got is more powerful than Shadowcat. He can not only send consciousness back to the past and future, but even his body can be sent back. And he traveled not only the past and the future, but also the parallel world of Marvel. Definitely, with his current ability, he can only let his own consciousness traverse at most. Only by becoming a level 5 mutant can the body travel together. Thinking of this, Levis thought of a lot of possibilities. For example, if he travels to other parallel worlds in the Marvel universe, can he sign in again? You must know that after he has signed into a target once, if he signs in again, he will generally not have any super ability or experience value rewards. But can you sign in repeatedly in a parallel world? This idea is well worth trying. But that won't happen until he becomes a 5th level mutant. There are still a lot of mutants in the academy that haven't signed up, enough to make him a level 5 mutant. And if I remember correctly, the Marvel Universe has a time management bureau, so this matter needs to be cautious. Inside the classroom, while talking and laughing, a teacher soon came to class, and Levi's was a little surprised that it was Reed who taught them. Seeing his surprised look, Lauren on the side explained with a smile, "Don't be surprised. After Dad became a teacher at the school, he often taught us all kinds of knowledge. It can be seen that the students like him very much." Levi's smiled. It was hard to imagine a guy who hated mutants so much, but now he's a teacher that mutants like. A boring day. The next day, Levi's received news from the 5 Cuckoo sisters. After more than half a month of work, his lab was finally ready. The news made him very excited. The lab is ready, which means it's time to start working on Magneto's machine. As for the researchers, he has already had candidates. That's Dr. Campbell. Dr. Campbell's ability to successfully develop Sentinel is beyond doubt. Levi's has great confidence in him, and believes that as long as he is given time, he will be able to develop a machine that enables ordinary people to activate Memory X and become a mutant without side effects. Immediately afterwards, he used space movement to bring Dr. Campbell out. As for whether the disappearance of Dr. Campbell would cause any uproar, he didn't care at all. No one knew that he took Dr. Campbell away. Beneath an abandoned farm in the suburbs of New York, no one could have imagined that there would be a large laboratory here. "Welcome to the lab." He was greeted by Mystique. Mystique was the leader of the Mutant Brotherhood while Magneto was in the military prison. This lab was also found by Mystique. "Are you all ready?" Levi's took Dr. Campbell and 2 of the Cuckoo sisters into the underground laboratory under the leadership of Mystique. "Don't worry, everything is ready," Mystique said as he led the way. Through the long metal passage, everyone soon came to the laboratory. Levi's looked around and saw that the electric stove, electronic analytical balance, magnetic stirrer and other equipment were all available. Many of these sophisticated scientific research instruments cannot be bought with money, and they were finally obtained through the resources given by S.H.I.E.L.D. At the same time, the machines made by Magneto are also placed in the test area. "Then let's get started." Seeing that there was no problem, Levi's waved his hand and let Dr. Campbell start his research behind him. There are still too few researchers. There is only Dr. Campbell in the huge research room, which always feels too monotonous, and the efficiency is too low. Mystique on the side said, "I have found some researchers who will be here soon. The Hellfire Club also has some researchers that can be dispatched." The Cuckoo sisters added, "Okay, get them ready as soon as possible." Levi's nodded with satisfaction. The more researchers the better. Chapter 59 Playing Tony Stark. Definitely, the confidentiality work must also be done well. There is telepathy of the Cuckoo sisters in this regard, which should be no problem. But when it comes to scientific researchers, Dr. Zin should be one of them. Ethan's family was all killed by terrorists, so he was already in the cave, and Levi's forcibly rescued him. But if he can stop it once, it doesn't mean that he can stop it the second time. It would be a waste for such an excellent researcher to die. Maybe I should bring him here, Levi's thought, rubbing his chin. Do it when you think of it. He dialed Tony directly. At the same time, in a labs full of technology, Tony's dropped cell phone automatically connected the call. "Hey, does Uncle Tony remember who I am?" Why isn't anyone answering the phone? Levi's is a little weird. Forget it, let's go and have a look. After thinking about it, he decided to go and have a look. It wasn't a problem anyway. Using space to move, he came to a laboratory in the blink of an eye. The whole lab looked a little messy. and Tony was lying on the ground with a bluish face. Is this the reactor being taken away? Levi's looked at Tony lying on the ground with some surprise, but he didn't expect him to come just in time, just when Obadiah took the reactor on Tony's chest. Hey, are you alright? Levi's turned him over and saw that he was holding the previously replaced reactor in his hand, trying to put it into his chest. Are you going to put this on your chest? Levi's took the reactor in his hand and played with it. Tony was going to put the reactor on, but he took it away. At the moment his eyes were white and he had the heart to kill. Hey, don't stare at me like that. Levi's spread his hands innocently. Are you going to put this thing on, you say? However, Tony was paralyzed by Obadiah's use of infrasound waves before. It would be a good to be able to climb here. Where can he speak? Levi's heart blossomed when he saw him staring at him the whole time. What a fun way to tease Iron Man like that. Okay, don't talk about it. As he spoke, he threw the reactor aside with his backhand. Seeing this, there was only one thing in Tony's mind that MMP wanted to blurt out. Without that reactor, the shrapnel in his body would soon enter his heart and kill him. Oh. It's really disgusting. Why did you dig a hole in your chest? Levi's looked at the hole in Tony's chest. It was filled with yellow fluid, which was disgusting. Then he violently removed the hoop from Tony's chest. After this operation, Tony's entire consciousness has begun to disintegrate. Seeing this, Levi's didn't waste any time, and directly used molecular manipulation to repair the wound on his chest. At the same time, the shrapnel in his body was also changed in molecular structure and became blood molecules. Just a moment. Tony's entire chest injury has recovered as before. Hey, it's time to wake up. Levi's poured a glass of red wine from a nearby wine rack, then came over to Tony and nudged him. Tony opened his eyes in a daze, and looked at himself for the first time. I'm not dead yet? Definitely. How could you die with me? But remember that I saved you again. Levi's sipped red wine and smiled with his legs crossed on the sofa beside him. Tony looked down and felt his hands on his chest to find that the hole in his chest had miraculously disappeared. Normally he would be very happy, but now he is not happy because if the chest is restored to the original, there is no way to use the reactor, which makes it impossible to ship the steel battle suit. After all, the reactor is so big that it is impossible to force it into the steel battle suit, and it is too late to modify it now. Vice. Now only you can save Pepper. Tony got up from the ground in a hurry, then came to Levi's and looked at him seriously. No problem, but don't forget. As much as you want. Tony cut him off. No, I just wanted to say don't forget to buy me a drink. Levi's gestured with a red wine glass. He is not short of money, and now Stark Industries also has his shares. If Tony gives him money, doesn't he give his own money? He's not that stupid. Besides, he didn't want to be seen as a greedy man. Definitely no problem. Although Tony was a little surprised at his request, this was just a trivial matter for him. Grab me, we're going. Levi's put down his red wine glass and said. Tony hurriedly grabbed his shoulders at this. The next moment, the two disappeared into the laboratory. Chapter 60 asking about the whereabouts of Dr. Ethan. Outside a laboratory in the Stark Industrial Building, there was a sudden loud rumbling sound. Immediately afterwards, Pepper ran out of the building. She desperately wanted to call Tony, but the phone never got through. At this moment, the ground suddenly shook. Immediately afterwards, a man of steel covered in metal crawled out from the ground. Where do you want to run? Obadiah's metallic voice came from the steel armor. Seeing this, little Pepper screamed in fright. At this moment, two people suddenly appeared not far from the steel armor. The steel armor, which was just about to kill Pepper, stopped immediately. Hey, Tony, didn't expect you to be alive. Obadiah looked at Tony in surprise. Tony. Pepper saw Tony and couldn't help running over. Seeing this, Obadiah directly raised the muzzle on his arm and aimed it at the two. Da! Exclamation mark. Seeing countless bullets swarming towards them, Tony could only shout, Vice. When the bullets were less than 1 meter away from the three, all the bullets stopped. Levi's folded his arms and smiled. Don't worry, it's just a tin box. Can you be in time next time? Tony's mouth twitched. He could see Levi's bad taste. Obviously, he could intercept the opponent's bullets earlier, but he had to play so exciting. I'd try. Levi's grinned. Obadiah was a little surprised when he saw that all the bullets were blocked. Then, without hesitation, he opened the small tracking projectile loaded on his back and pressed it to fire. The small homing missile, however, did not respond at all. What's going on? Obadiah was a little puzzled. It's useless. You can stop for a while. Levi's disdainfully stretched out his hand and grabbed it in the void, and the next moment he saw Obadiah's steel armor quickly dismantled. No. Obadiah watched in horror as his steel armor was torn apart and let out a powerless roar. Without this armor, he is just an ordinary old man. However, no matter how much he wailed, it was useless, but in the blink of an eye, the entire iron shell was dismantled. Obadiah's old figure also rolled out of it. It's up to you next. Levi's looked at Tony with a bored look. No, leave it to me. At this time Phil Coulson came out of the building, and he came to Obadiah with a look of anger. Obadiah, I will arrest you on charges of smuggling arms and killing S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, etc. After that, Phil Coulson punched Obadiah in the face with an angry punch. Because in the laboratory just now, several agents have been killed by Obadiah. If it weren't for the circumstances, he would have wanted to kill Obadiah with one shot. After the steel armor was dismantled, Obadiah had been sluggish. He couldn't accept that the armor he had worked so hard to build could be dismantled so easily. At this time Tony came to Levi's and said, "You saved me again, $1 billion USD is enough." Levi's raised his eyebrows. "Am I that greedy for money?" "No, this time is different. You saved Pepper." At the moment Tony seemed to finally realize the importance of Pepper to him. "No need. Your money is mine after all." Levi's shook his head with his arms crossed. Tony was stunned when he heard his words, a little confused. The little Pepper on the side reacted, and she guessed, "Tony, during the time when you disappeared, Stark Industries stock fell sharply. Just a few days ago, someone bought Stark Industries stock aggressively, and now it has become the second largest shareholder of Stark Industries." Tony also understood after hearing the words. He gave a thumbs up and said, "Very wise decision." Seeing him look so stinky, Levi's couldn't help but pouted, and then he started talking about business. "Tony, I actually came to you this time to ask Dr. Zan. I have something to ask him." "Dr. Ethan, he's back." "Go back?" Levi's froze for a moment. "Yes, back to the Gimla area, where is his hometown." "Why didn't you stop him?" Levi's frowned, remembering that the Gimla area was chaotically occupied by a group of terrorists. "I want to." Tony looked helpless. He also tried to stop Ethan, but Ethan didn't listen at all, and was very persistent in wanting to return to his hometown. There was no way Tony had to let him go. Levi's couldn't help but sighed, and could see that Ethan was really determined to die, otherwise he wouldn't go there knowing that the Gimla area was very chaotic. "Okay, since that's the case, I'll leave first. Goodbye, I'll invite you to the next dance." Tony didn't hold back because he had a lot of work to do himself. "Thank you, Mr. Vice." Pepper said thanks again. Levi's waved his hand to leave. Chapter 61 Sign-In. Tony, become a mechanical genius. Definitely, before he left, he didn't forget that he didn't sign in today. "I don't know what super ability Tony can bring him." Ding. Did the host check in with Tony Stark? Sign in. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability Heart of Machinery, with 100 experience points. Mechanical heart? Exclamation mark. After integrating this super ability, Levi's instantly understood the specific role of this super ability. To put it simply, having a mechanical heart is equivalent to making him a mechanical genius, with unparalleled ability in machinery. Definitely, no matter how powerful the ability is, you need to accumulate a certain amount of knowledge. And Levi's happens to have a super brain that has stored a lot of knowledge in physics and chemistry. With these knowledge reserves, he can even create a steel armor at any time, and it is nothing to definitely make a steel armor. The power core of the steel armor is the most important. And if Levi's wants to make a reactor power source like Tony's, it's too easy. Because he has the last element material, he can directly create non-existent material to replace the reactor energy. Thinking of this, a blueprint had already appeared in his mind. Above a city composed entirely of mutants, there was a huge amount of sky battleship hidden. This is his ambition for the future, to create an academy city of his own. But it's too far to think about it for now. Now he has to Dr. Ethan and bring him back. The next day, Levi's came to the Gimla area, along with Polaris and Clarice. The three came to a small town. "Are we here to find someone?" Clarice asked curiously. Levi's nodded. "We're looking for a man named Dr. Zan." Polaris looked at him and said, "Don't you know the exact location of this Dr. Zan?" "It's a little hard to find." "Well, it's really difficult, but don't worry, I have a way." Ordinary people can't use telepathy to find them. In telepathy, mutants are so special that they can tell them apart. But there are so many ordinary people that it is impossible to tell who is who. So it is not feasible to use the brainwave intensifier to find. However, Levi's is not worried. Just use telepathy to find people around Dr. Ethan to obtain memories. At the same time, obtaining the memories of a large number of humans around him is a huge workload. Fortunately, he has the ability of super brain. Otherwise, you can't really handle it. The three entered the town. I saw that the whole town was dilapidated. There were not many pedestrians on the street, and every pedestrian looked yellow and thin. After seeing the three of them, these pedestrians hurriedly avoided as if they had seen some terrifying people. But for a moment there was no one on the street. "What's wrong with them?" Clarice wondered why these people hid when they saw them. "It should be affected by the war," Levi's explained with a heavy expression. "Today's Gimla area is being baptized by artillery fire, and the culprit is the Ten Rings, also known as the Ten Rings. This is a huge organization, and they have their presence almost all over the world. Compared with Hydra, which shows up from time to time, the Ten Rings gang is more low-key. But there is no doubt that they also have bigger ambitions. It can be seen from the fact that they captured Tony but did not kill him, but asked Tony to make weapons for them. It can be seen that the Ten Rings are very concerned about high-tech weapons." Looking at the tragedy in the town, both Polaris and Clarice felt a little unbearable. In this era of technological development, it is hard to imagine that there is such a tragic place here. All the people in the town were yellow-faced and skinny. At first glance, They didn't have enough to eat. Even the corpses on the side of the road stink because no one was handling them. Come on, forget about it, Levi's said flatly. He doesn't have the ability to manage these things, and he can't manage them, and even if he can manage them, he doesn't want to manage these things that are not related to him. Although Polaris and Clarice are a little emotional, the importance of things is still clear. After walking around the town, Levi's quickly scanned the entire town with telepathy. Unfortunately, there is no information he wants here. Continue to the next town. However, when they came to this town, there was a sudden rumbling around. The whole town was engulfed by artillery fire. Be careful. Levi's looked around vigilantly. Although he was not afraid of hot weapons, Clarice and Polaris were not. Who the hell did this? Polaris frowned. Levi's used telepathy to scan the surroundings, and suddenly found a large number of terrorist militants outside the town. And he was very familiar with these terrorists. It's the Ten Rings Gang. 10 Ring Gang? Polaris and Clarice were both puzzled. It's the name of a group of terrorist organizations. When Levi's said this, the two suddenly understood. Chapter 62 Scarlet Witch Wanda and Quicksilver Pietro. So are we going to do this? Get out of here? Clarice frowned. The whole town has been destroyed, and there is no way to see anyone alive, so there is no way to find someone. Wait first, it seems that there are 2 people alive. Levi's telepathy found 2 living people in the ruins of the town, and these 2 people were not ordinary people, but mutants. There are still people alive? Where are they? Both Polaris and Clarice were a little surprised to hear that there were still people alive. Come with me. Led by Levi's, the 3 came to a collapsed house. It was a little surprising that there was still a missile on the ruins, but the missile did not explode. However, the risk of explosion cannot be ruled out. Come closer, Levi's said to Polaris and Clarice beside him. In case the missile exploded, he could also use the space to move away with the 2 of them. The 2 of them got close to him. Immediately afterwards, Levi's waved his hand and used electromagnetic force to carefully remove all the broken bricks and tiles from the house. Finally, the missile that did not explode was slowly moved away. This is still a missile made by Stark Industries. Seeing the markings on the missile, he immediately recognized that it was made by Stark Industries. Throwing the missile aside, he continued to clear the ruins of the house. Soon, the collapsed house was cleared out. I saw a man and a woman, 2 teenagers hugging each other and lying motionless in the corner of the ruins. It's 2 kids, Clarice exclaimed. Polaris hurried forward and took both children out. How is it? Clarice asked anxiously. Fortunately, I just passed out. Polaris finally breathed a sigh of relief after looking at it. These 2 kids are mutants. Let's send them back to the academy first. Levi's frowned. He always felt that these 2 children looked familiar, but he couldn't remember who they were. It stands to reason that he has the super ability of Super Brain, and his previous memories have been sorted out, and it is impossible to forget. Suddenly he thought of an idea, that is to sign the 2 of them. Ding. Did the host check into mutant Quicksilver? What? Turned out to be Quicksilver? After being prompted by the system, Levi's looked at the boy in front of him in astonishment. This teenage boy turned out to be Quicksilver? Did something go wrong? If I remember correctly, in Avengers Alliance 2, Quicksilver is already in his 20s. That's not right. He still hasn't figured out whether the Quicksilver in front of him is the setting of Avengers Alliance or the setting of XMan. In short, the Marvel Universe is too complicated, and it is not easy for him to jump to conclusions. But the system won't lie to him. The boy in front of him should be Quicksilver without a doubt. If the boy is Quicksilver, then the other little girl doesn't have to guess to know it must be Scarlet Witch Wanda. Ding. Did the host check in on the mutant Scarlet Witch Wanda? Sure enough, the little girl in front of him was Scarlet Witch Wanda. Homeland destroyed by artillery fire and missiles from Stark Industries. It's a bit of a setting for Avengers, Age of Ultron. But the 2 are indeed mutants. If it is the setting of Avengers, Age of Ultron, then they are not mutants, but the ability obtained through Mind Gem. But there's a lot of conflict in it, and Levi's can't figure it out. If he didn't understand, he didn't bother to think about it. The system signs me in. Scarlet Witch's origin magic power is very eye-catching. Ding. Sign in failed. Levi's mouth twitched slightly, unexpectedly failing. Forget it, take it back to the academy first, and the sign-in will always be successful. Are they mutants? Polaris and Clarice were a little surprised to hear his words. Yes, let's take them back first. Levis, aren't you looking for someone? Clarice asked suspiciously. Don't worry, it's only a moment to go back. Levi's smiled and shook his head. Yeah. Clarice was a little embarrassed that she asked such a stupid question. Okay, come and catch me. We're ready to go back. Polaris and Clarice nodded. Then the 3 of them took 2 children and disappeared into the ruins in an instant. In Mutant College. Teacher Kin, show them quickly. Levi's and Polaris came to the infirmary with Quicksilver and Wanda, respectively, and found Jean Grey. Let's put it on the hospital bed first. Qin Jian and the others hurried over with their 2 children in their arms. Where did you bring the children back from? Qin asked with some doubts. It was in the Gimla area, rescued from the ruins. Clarice explained. Gimla? Jin was a little surprised, but he was not surprised when he thought that Levi's had the ability to move and space. Jin simply checked the 2 children. Fortunately, They were just frightened and fainted, and their bodies were not injured. They only needed a rest to recover. Great. Polaris and Clarice were relieved after hearing the words. Chapter 63 Being Treated as God. Okay, let's take care of these two children here. I have to go back and find Dr. Ethan. Levi's then looked at Polaris and Clarice. We're going with you. No need. Levi's waved his hand in rejection. Okay then. Seeing that he refused, the two did not insist. Returning to the destroyed town, Levi squinted slightly in a direction where the Ten-Ring Gang left. Originally, he wanted to get rid of these people, but after thinking about it, he still didn't do it. This revenge should be left to Wanda and Quicksilver to avenge themselves. Ignoring these people, Levi's disappeared into the town in the blink of an eye. To the next town, telepathy unfolds and soon gets word from Dr. Ethan. However, this news made Levi's look a little weird, because he was once again caught by the Ten Rings. On the square inches the center of the town, the terrorists of the Ten Rings Gang are looting here, and all the old and weak women and children have been pulled out. The men stayed to work as coolies. The women stayed to enjoy, and some old and weak women and children were driven away. If they dared to resist, a bullet would inevitably send them on their way. This scene is really too cruel, but it is not uncommon in this war-affected area. And doctors and seemed to be tied to the big truck in resignation. Seeing this, Levi's could only sigh helplessly. It seems that only by giving him some hope can he arouse the desire to live. With the arrival of Levi's, the terrorists of the Ten Rings Gang also discovered him one after another. Levi's ignored the people and walked straight towards the truck. One of the terrorists from the Ten Rings Gang fired without hesitation. Boom! Exclamation mark. The sound of bullets sounded, making the surrounding people a little terrified. Because every time a terrorist shoots, it means that another person will be mercilessly killed. However, the bullet stopped when it was 1 meter away from Levi's. He didn't look back, just waved it casually. The next moment, the bullet flew backwards. PSST! Exclamation mark. I saw that the bullet seemed to be alive, constantly passing through the heads of the terrorists. But in an instant, all terrorists were killed by this bullet. It was not until all the terrorists fell that the surrounding townspeople reacted, and they looked at the terrorists around them with wide eyes in disbelief. Then all the townspeople cheered. Feeling the noise around him, Dr. Ethan also came back to his senses, and he looked at Levi's who was approaching without any expression. Dr. Ethan, I came to you specially. I have an experimental plan that needs your participation. Levi's directly invited. Ethan's expression didn't change when he heard his words. I reject. Hearing this answer, he was not surprised. What if I could resurrect your family? Hearing this, Ethan's eyes had a little look. Come on, don't deceive me. He simply didn't believe that someone could resurrect someone who had died, not even a corpse. I didn't deceive you. The corners of Levi's mouth twitched slightly, and then he came to the side of a middle-aged man who fell to the ground and kept wailing. The man's arm was brutally severed by the terrorists, and he saw that he had already bled too much and died soon. He didn't say a word, just put his hand on the man's arm. The next moment, something magical happened. I saw that this person's arm actually gradually grew out, but in a moment the arm appeared intact. My arm is ready. The middle-aged man got up from the ground in disbelief and kept looking at his arm. Really recovered? The middle-aged man couldn't help rubbing his eyes excitedly. Ha 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 tilde, my arm has recovered. The other townspeople around were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. God, what did I see? You are the one sent by God to save us. Thank God for saving us. Some fanatics completely regard Levi's as a god, and worship him directly. Soon everyone else learned to kneel and worship. Ethan, who was on the side, was stunned when he saw this scene. He had no idea that someone could bring a broken limb back to life. He stared blankly at Levi's, feeling that the man in front of him was God. Don't worship everyone, you can share these foods. Levi's waved his hand and used molecular manipulation to instantly create some chicken, beef and other foods. The molecular structure of meat is relatively simple, and he can easily create it. When the townspeople saw the food, they became even more frenzied. They did not snatch the food, but continued to worship. Levi's ignored them. Dr. Ethan, you should believe it now. Believe. I believe. You are the reincarnation of God. I beg you to resurrect my family so that I can do anything. Ethan bowed his head in a frenzy, just like those fanatics. Chapter 64 Master can do anything to me? Levi's was taken aback. But that's fine. It saves him so much nonsense. Follow me. I'll help you resurrect your family. Yes. Ethan nodded again and again. Seeing this, Levi's grabbed him by the shoulders, and the two of them disappeared in place in an instant using space to move. It was not until he disappeared that the townspeople began to snatch food. The other side. Levi's took Ethan to the underground laboratory in an instant. Aware of his arrival, Suf and Phoebe hurried over among the Cuckoo sisters. Master, sisters. Suf and Phoebe shouted respectfully. I've already said that when someone is around, just call me by my name. Levi's coughed a little helplessly. Among the 5 Cuckoo sisters, Celeste and Desm, who are the big sister and the second sister, are very obedient. But the 3 sisters Suf, Phoebe and Tracy McCready are a little naughty. Yes, Master. Suf and Phoebe nodded. Levi's mouth twitched slightly when he saw this. He no longer bothered about the question of the name. turned to look at Ethan and said, "Ethan, I can't revive your family for you for the time being, but don't worry. I have an ability that can make people's consciousness go back to the past, so that they can change the future and save your family." "Will that allow me to go back to the past and change the future of my family?" Ethan asked hurriedly. Levi's shook his head. "Your soul simply can't stand the pain of traveling back to the past." To know why Wolverine is allowed to travel back in the original book, it is precisely because Wolverine's soul is tougher. If it is an ordinary person, I am afraid that the soul has already dissipated. Besides, Ethan's family was killed by terrorists. Even if he was allowed to go back, what could he do as an ordinary person? This. Ethan was a little at a loss. "Don't worry, although my ability cannot teleport the body at the moment, it will not take long for the body and consciousness to travel back to the past together, and then I will save your family." That's what Levi's had in mind. Manipulating this ability with other molecules may be able to directly create a body, but the soul is still unable to be created by him. So if you want to save Ethan's family, you have to travel back in time. "I believe you." After listening to his words, Ethan chose to believe him without reservation. "Well, then, Dr. Ethan, you should stay in the laboratory and help." "No problem." Ethan agreed decisively, and then took the initiative to join the research. Seeing this, Levi's nodded with satisfaction, and did not waste his efforts to find him, so that the research progress would definitely be greatly increased. As for traveling back to the past to save his family, that's a small matter. When he's a level 5 mutant, he doesn't mind doing this little favor. "Master." At this time, the coquettish voices of Suf and Phoebe beside him awakened Levi's, who was thinking, "What's wrong, Master? You have grown up too." After saying that, Suf and Phoebe stuck to him, acting like a spoiled child. "You two give me some seriousness." Levi's coughed dryly and hurriedly got rid of the entanglement between the two. "Okay, I'll leave first if I have something to do." After he finished speaking, he moved directly into the laboratory and disappeared in a space. Suf and Phoebe looked at each other and PSST laughed out loud. Immediately afterwards, the two chatted in the spiritual network. Phoebe, the master was so embarrassed just now. The shy master is so funny." "Phoebe, Suf, what did you do to the master?" "It's big sister, we teased the master just now, and the master's reaction was so funny." "You are saying this, so you are not afraid that the master will punish you?" "What are you afraid of? If it's a big deal, let the master do whatever he wants." When the other three sisters saw that they were having a good chat, they also joined in. It just so happened that Levi's didn't check their mental network, otherwise, they would definitely be punished. When we returned to Mutant College, it was already night. "Vice, you're back." "Glad to see him back, Polaris." "Well, by the way, are those two children awake?" Levi's asked curiously. "I've woken up. Go and have a look," Polaris said and dragged him to the infirmary. In the infirmary, brother and sister Wanda and Pietro had indeed woken up. "Wanda, here comes the one Pietro rescued you from," Polaris shouted. When the two siblings heard his words, they all looked at Levi's. The two then thanked them respectfully. "Thank you, X2." "It's fine." Levi's smiled and looked at the two of them. "What's your name?" "My name is Wanda, my sister, and he is Pietro." Wanda introduced the two of them. "Hello, my name is Levi's, you can just call me." Levi's smiled and touched the heads of the two. "Big brother Vice." The two of them called out obediently. "When we found you, the whole town was in ruins. Only you survived strong. Don't be sad, and live well in the future." Levi's comforted. Chapter 65 Wanda and Pietro's enemy, the Ten-Ring Gang. The two had just lost a loved one and experienced a terrifying disaster, and they were emotionally unstable. Hearing him say that, both of them couldn't hold back their tears. "I must work hard to live, and then take revenge." Wanda clenched her fists and her eyes were firm. "Yes, I will definitely take revenge on Stark Industries," Pietro said with red eyes and gritted teeth. Levi's couldn't help frowning when he heard it. It seems that because of that missile, they still let them target the Stark industry for hatred. This will not work. After all, the culprit is the Ten Rings Gang. These people cannot be allowed to go unpunished. "No, Wanda, Pietro, your enemies are not Stark Industries. The mastermind behind the destruction of the town is the Ten Rings Gang." "The Ten Rings Gang?" Wanda and Pietro were a little puzzled when they heard his words. "That's right, the Ten Rings Gang are the terrorists who attacked your town. Remember, your enemies are those who use weapons, not those who make them. Understand?" Levi's looked at the two seriously. "Well, we see." Wanda and Pietro nodded heavily upon hearing this. They are still young now, so they can't tell who is the real enemy, so they have always regarded Tony Stark as the enemy. This is totally unnecessary, and the true enemy cannot be allowed to go unpunished. "I have written down all the people who destroyed your village. After you have the ability, go and take revenge yourself." "We will definitely try." Wanda and Pietro looked at each other, and then agreed with a firm expression. "Okay, it's getting late, you should go and have a good rest." Levi smiled and let the two go to rest. "Vice, why don't we avenge them?" Polaris asked with a puzzled look after the two children left. In her opinion, helping Wanda and Pietro take revenge should be a very simple matter for them. Levi's chuckled, "It's just giving them a goal to work towards." When Polaris heard this, He suddenly realized that he was afraid that the two children would be too sad to think about it. Vice. Polaris looked at him tightly, and the man in front of him was too careful. He always felt like he had thought of everything in advance. It's just that she has been choosing to escape when dealing with feelings, which makes her a little distressed. What's wrong? Levi's turned to look at her suspiciously. Can you come to my room tonight? Polaris slowly approached him with a slightly raised corner of his mouth. Cough that, I'm used to sleeping alone. He took a few steps back calmly. Polaris shrugged unexpectedly. All right then. Good night. With that, she turned and left. Forehead. Levi's was stunned for a while, but he didn't expect Polaris to leave. Forget it. Go back to sleep. He didn't even think about it if he didn't understand. It's just that he always feels a little energetic recently, perhaps because of the evolution of his body, or else he'd better play games at night. The next day, Levi's came to the classroom normally, but this morning seems to be a little too lively. Hey, Poppy, have you heard that the school is going to hold a power ranking competition, and everyone who enters the top 10 will be rewarded with $10,000. Not only that, I heard that there are more rewards for the top 3. I've heard of this too, and there are a lot of new bats in the gym, which is great. It is said that these are the money from Levi's. Why is he so rich? Hearing these remarks, Levi's couldn't help but smile. It seems that this time the school equipment update and competition have excited everyone. Levi's had just walked into the professor when Poppy Iceman stood up and shouted, "Boss." The students in the classroom looked at him in astonishment, wondering what the hell he was up to. Levi's was also a little confused. Hey, boss, didn't you let him call you boss when you beat John? So I'll recognize you as boss like him. Iceman, Poppy said with a look of flattery. Tell me, what do you want? Seeing him like this, Levi's knew that something must have happened to him. Otherwise, Poppy usually ignores him. It's nothing, I just know that you are too powerful, boss, and it's a great honor for me to be your little brother. If Poppy regarded Levi's as an opponent before, he would naturally have an attitude of not admitting defeat, so he didn't give him any good looks. But since learning that Levi's has become the leader of the X-Men, his attitude has changed. If someone is only stronger than you, he may be regarded as an opponent, but if the opponent is an existence that you can't hope to achieve, then the opponent will not be regarded as an opponent, but an object of worship. Iceman Poppy is like that. After hearing about what Levi's had been up to during this time from Storm yesterday, he no longer had any idea of comparing. Levi's, however, didn't take Poppy's word lightly. There must be something wrong with this guy being so enthusiastic. Chapter 66 Phoenix Awakening. Omen. Tell me if you have something, or I won't have time to chat with you, Levi said with his arms crossed. Okay then, Bobby said a little embarrassedly. I heard that you initiated this competition. I don't know how much the top 3 prizes are. So you want to know this? Levi's couldn't help raising his eyebrows. It wasn't just Poppy who wanted to know. Everyone in the classroom wanted to know, including Clarice and Naughty. Since everyone wants to know so much, then I'll tell you all. The third place will add $10,000, the second place will add $20,000, and the first place will add $30,000, and, having said that, Levi's paused. The people in the classroom couldn't help swallowing when they heard this. The reward was too generous. What is the salary of the average person these days? I am afraid that it is impossible to drop $10,000 in a year. After all, there are expenses such as food and drink. This $10,000 can be said to be what the average person can leave after a year of work. Not to mention that the first place has increased by $30,000, and if all add up, it will be $40,000, which is a lot of money. Everyone in the classroom did not speak, waiting for his next words. Levi's looked at the crowd, and then smiled, and the top 3 have a chance to join the X-Men. This time, the students in the classroom burst into cheers. You must know that X-Men is the most wanted by these students. No one. Usually they don't miss the appearance of X-Men wearing cool combat uniforms and driving stealth high-tech fighter jets. Almost every student dreams of joining the X-Men. Okay, let me be quiet. At this point Storm walked into the classroom. Vice, can I go back to your seat? Definitely. Levi's shrugged and sat down beside Polaris. Vice, is there really that much prize money for the first place in the competition? The little Naughty on the other side asked curiously. Definitely. Then can I participate? Polaris looked eager to try. If you participate, the first place is not reserved. Levi's mouth twitched slightly. Polaris is a level 3 mutant, and even among the level 3 mutants, it belongs to a relatively strong category. Let her participate in this competition, wouldn't that be quack killing? After all, most of the students in the school have awakening ability not long ago, and most of the strengths that can be exerted are only the level of second-level mutants. Alright then. Polaris shrugged nonchalantly. She wasn't short of money anyway. I don't know if I can participate. Little Naughty also looked eager to try, and it seemed that she still cared about the reward for the first place. Well, it should be possible. Levi's nodded. Although the Naughty ability is very dangerous, as long as it is controlled properly, it will be fine not to suck others up in one breath. If you just absorb the opponent's super ability energy, you can easily subdue the opponent. How is it? Clarice, do you want to participate? Polaris, who was on the side, asked Clarice without speaking. Me? Forget it, my ability is too dangerous. Clarice shook her head. Her teleportation ability was very unstable and couldn't be used for a game at all. But besides teleporting ability, she had no other means of attack, so she gave up decisively. Well, I didn't think of that, Levi said, rubbing his chin. Mutants have different abilities, some have no attack power at all, and some are very dangerous. If it is used to deal with the enemy, it is okay to be dangerous, but if it is used for competition, it is not suitable. Clarice, maybe you should learn some close-up fighting techniques, Levi suggested. Yes, I agree. Teleportability plus close combat. If you unexpectedly appear behind the enemy, you can easily subdue the opponent, Shadowcat said in agreement. Clarice's eyes lit up when she heard their words. This is indeed an effective way to improve. Thanks, I will learn the fighting technique. Hee, you're welcome. Levi smiled and waved his hand. Cough tilde vice, can you be quiet? Storm, who was lecturing on the stage, reminded him with a dry cough. Although Levi's is the leader of their X-Men in private, he is still a student in the classroom. Okay, Mr. Olo. Levi's immediately sat up like a good baby when he heard the words. This made Polaris and the others next to them couldn't help but laugh a little. Storm lectured on stage on how to control ability and how to develop ability. Levi's in the audience heard drowsiness. Yet at this time, there was a buzzing sound around him, and Levi's only felt an unprecedented huge mental force surrounding him, making him annoyed. All the students in the classroom covered their ears in pain, and many students even fainted. Even Storm couldn't help covering his head. Chapter 67 Thrilling. Phoenix Force Runaway. What the hell happened? Levi stood up suddenly, frowning and sensing the source of this enormous spiritual power. Next door is another classroom, and the teacher in class is Jean Grey. Thinking of this, his expression changed drastically and he quickly rushed out of the classroom. To the next classroom. Sure enough, Jean Grey fell to the ground in pain for a year, and all the students in the classroom fainted. In Levi's eyes, Jean Grey from at the moment radiated a lot of red energy and wrapped her around her. This energy is like a natural king, and anyone who looks at it will be stunned. Levi's appearance was like a provocation, and then all the red energy rushed towards Levi's. Oops, the Phoenix Force is gone. Levi's looked at these red energies with a solemn expression. He didn't expect that Jean Grey would actually explode the Phoenix Force at this time. I saw that the surging red energy gradually formed a phoenix form, and the violent energy seemed to destroy everything. Go back to me. Levi's threw a punch with vector manipulation in full force. With a whimper, the phoenix formed by the Phoenix Force was broken up by this punch. Immediately afterwards, he quickly came to Jean Grey and held her chest, trying to use the vector operation to control the Phoenix Force back into her body. At this time, Polaris, Storm, Cyclops and others all rushed towards this direction. The crowd didn't bother him when they saw Levi's. After a long time, Levi's breathed a sigh of relief, and then sat down on the ground. How's it going? Jean-Chi. Cyclops rushed to his side and said, don't worry, that force is temporarily suppressed. Levi's was gasping for breath, and now he still has some lingering fears. The Phoenix Force is really too terrifying. The vast red energy is as shocking as the starry sky. Fortunately, the Phoenix Force only ran wild a little, otherwise, he would definitely not be able to suppress it. You must know that Phoenix Force is the embodiment of the life force and emotional force of the original universe. It's the most feared force in the Marvel multi-universe. Every universe in the Marvel universe is different, but Phoenix Force is something that cannot be changed in the multi-universe. It is as powerful as a god no matter which universe it is in. It is said that Jean Grey is a 5th level mutant, but this is not true. Jean Grey was originally just a level 3 mutant with telepathy. Phoenix Force made her so powerful that people thought she was a level 5 mutant. But if he really controls the Phoenix Force, it will be far more than a 5th level mutant. He will become the true god of the Marvel Universe. The only one that can compete with it is Scarlet Witch's origin magic power. Vice, are you alright? Polaris and Shadowcat hurried over and asked. It's okay, it's just that the consumption is a little big. Levi smiled and shook his head, then stood up with the help of the two of them. How are you, Jean? Cyclops kept calling out to Jean Grey. Jean slowly woke up. She opened her eyes to look at everyone, and then looked at the fainted students in the classroom. What did I just do? Jean's heart was broken. She actually used ability to hurt the students. Jean, you finally woke up. Cyclops hugged her happily. Jean, it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. Storm comforted. Teacher Jean, what happened before? Levi's asked with a frown. For this Phoenix Force awakening, he was not prepared at all. After all, in the original work, it was Jean Grey who forcibly used the brainwave intensifier to bring out Phoenix Force. But the last time was the brainwave intensifier used by Levi's. It stands to reason that there is no reason for Jean Grey to suddenly awakening Phoenix Force. Jean Grey recalled hard, I saw John playing with fire, so I stopped him, and then I can't remember. Levi's frowned after hearing this, and has determined that it was because of John's play with fire that the Phoenix Force went berserk. After all, what a noble existence Phoenix Force is. Someone playing with fire in front of it is simply a provocation. Okay, Mr. Scott, let's take Mr. Kin back to rest. Cyclops nodded, then left with the piano. What the hell is going on? Polaris on the side couldn't hold back the doubts in his heart. Levi's sighed and explained, Mr. Kin has a Phoenix Force in her body, which is equivalent to a 5th level mutant, but she can't control the power in her body. This time, it's probably because of John's flame that it burst out. Level 5 mutant? Exclamation mark. When Polaris heard his words, she was a little shocked. She was the strongest mutant at the moment, and she was only a level 4 mutant, such as her father Magneto, Professor X and Levi's. But I didn't expect that the Academy still has the existence of the 5th level mutant. Chapter 68 Energy Absorption, the Power of the Phoenix. Mr. Storm, don't let Teacher Kin come here to teach in the future. Levi's looked at Storm and said, understood, I will teach her in another class. Storm also knew that this class couldn't let Kin come to the class. If she sees John's flames again and goes berserk, I'm afraid no one can stop her. Son, you handled it very well. At this time, Professor X came to the classroom in a wheelchair, and he looked at Levi's admiringly. Just now, he also discovered the sign of the outbreak of the power of the Phoenix in the piano for the first time, but he did not appear, but wanted to see how Levi's would deal with it. It can be said that Levi's handled it perfectly, so that he could not pick out the slightest fault. If it were him, he wouldn't necessarily be able to suppress the power of the Phoenix. Professor Storm came to Professor X's side. Yeah. Come with me. Professor X turned and left the classroom after pushing the wheelchair. Seeing this, Levi's was a little puzzled, and didn't understand what Professor X was going to say to him. Mr. Olo, please send the students who fainted in the classroom to the infirmary first, and I'll come when I go. Okay. Storm nodded. Leave the classroom. Levi's came behind Professor X in the corridor and pushed the wheelchair actively. Seeing this, Professor X smiled and said, what do you think about this matter? 55. Professor is talking about Teacher Kin? Yes, since the extra energy in the body of the piano, it has become very unstable, and it may even threaten everything around it at any time. If it was you, how would you deal with it? Levi's frowned when he heard Professor X's words, and after thinking about it, he suddenly had a very bold idea. Maybe I have a way to make the power in Teacher Kin disappear. Oh? Professor X looked back at him in surprise. Seeing this, Levi's explained, I have a special super ability, which is similar to the naughty energy absorbing. If I can suck out the power of the Phoenix from Teacher Kin's body, I should be able to solve this problem completely for Teacher Kin. Hidden danger. 39. His energy absorption can absorb any energy, so the Phoenix Force should also be able to do it. He might even be able to control the power of the Phoenix in one fell swoop. However, Professor X shook his head. No, this is just transferring the threat to your body. Professor, maybe I can control this power? Levi's defended. Vice, you can't ruin yourself for Jin. Professor X was decidedly different from what he did. Okay then. Levi's shrugged. In fact, even if Professor X agreed now, he wouldn't do it, at least until he became a 5th level mutant. Otherwise, he is completely unsure of suppressing the power of the Phoenix. Speaking of which, the last time he checked in with Jean Grey, he only gave double the experience points, which always made him a little strange. But now that I think about it, Kin has not awakened to the power of the Phoenix, so it is no wonder that she did not sign in to obtain the power of the Phoenix. But now he also has a way to gain the power of the Phoenix. Phoenix power, origin magic power. I don't know how strong these two strongest forces in the Marvel Universe appear at the same time. Levi's was looking forward to it. Time passed slowly. It has been a week since the last time Kin broke out the power of the Phoenix. Levi's resigned to Wanda several times, but failed each time. This made him a little speechless. He was so odd before. Is he going to become African now? However, he guessed that it is also possible that Wanda's origin magic power is too powerful, which leads to frequent check-in failures. Maybe he should still be promoted to level 5 mutant first, and then hit the idea of origin magic power. He checked the system panel and found that he was still not far from becoming a 5th level mutant. Host, Levi's. Super ability, vector operation, space movement, frozen control, flame control, energy absorption, electromagnetic force, evolution, telepathy, super infrasound, space reversal, atomic collapse, stealth, molecular manipulation, dragon incarnation, super brain, super ability level, LV.4, 4th level mutant. Experience value, 10,000 6,700. If it goes well, it may be possible to upgrade in less than a month. 99. Levi's nodded with satisfaction. Then he checked into Colossus not far away. Ding. Did the host check into the mutant Colossus? Yes. Ding. Sign-in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability ionization. With 100 experience points. It really is steel. This ability doesn't seem to have any effect on me. Even if he doesn't need to iron his body, nothing can hurt him. Moreover, his current physical strength is due to the existence of the super ability of evolution, which can be said to be no weaker than steel. It was also during Levi's daily class in the White House in Washington District. A figure like a ghost broke through many obstacles and came to the president's office. More than a dozen bodyguards in black suits protect the top leaders of the Two Kingdom, but this has no effect on the ghostly mutants. In just a moment, all the bodyguards were knocked to the ground. The phantom-like figure was riding on the president, and the bodyguards in the room also clearly saw the phantom. It was a mutant with blue skin, with a tail behind him, and he was rolling a dagger into the hands of the mutants. Seeing that his president was about to die at the hands of mutants, one of the bodyguards hurriedly shot. Boom. After a shot was fired, it was a little surprising that the ghostly male blue-skinned mutant was actually shot. The mutant who was hit disappeared instantly, leaving only a dagger stuck on the table beside the supreme leader. The assassination of the country's top leader by mutants was no small matter, and soon various agencies began to investigate. At the same time, an old man with glasses came to the presidential office. "Mr. President, I have to say that your luck is really good, it's just a little bit worse." The man teased at the hole on the table that was pierced by the dagger. "What are you here for?" The president ignored his ridicule, calmly picked up the wine on the side and poured himself a glass. "I need your authorization to approve a special operation." 39. "I thought you were here to talk to me about education reform." The president shrugged and joked back. "Mr. President, you are so funny." Just as the two were talking, another man in a suit walked in at the door. "Mr. President, here I come." 99. "Member Kelly, you are welcome." The president finally showed a smile when he saw the person who came. After experiencing the assassination of the mutants, he also paid attention to the issue of the mutant spill. That's why Congressman Kelly was brought in. But the real Senator Kelly has long since died because of Magneto's machine, and the current Senator Kelly is just Mystique pretending to be. The identity of Senator Kelly is very important to the Mutant Brotherhood, and Mystique usually pretends to be Senator Kelly to attend various meetings. So no one found out that the real Congressman Kelly had died. "This is Colonel William Stryker." The president introduced Congressman Kelly. "Hello." Senator Kelly offered to shake hands with Colonel Stryker. "Colonel Stryker's department set out to deal with mutants, and it has been traced back to my predecessor in this position." The president continued his introduction, but was interrupted by Colonel Stryker. Colonel Stryker looked at Senator Kelly and asked sharply, "Remember, Senator Kelly, you strongly supported the Mutant Registration Act some time ago, but you seem to have changed your attitude recently." 99. Senator Kelly was stunned for a moment when he heard the question, but he soon smiled. "I'm just doing what's good for the country." The answer was vague, but Colonel Stryker didn't pay much attention to it. He took out some documents and put them on the table. "Here's some information we've gathered that says there's a school for mutants in upstate New York." The president and Congressman Kelly took the documents and looked at them, all of which were pictures of some school buildings, which looked a little blurry. "Where did you get this information?" the president asked. "We interrogated the Liberty Island incident, a mutant terrorist." "You're talking about Eric?" "Did you interrogate him?" Congressman Kelly, who was transformed from Mystique, said subconsciously. Colonel Stryker nodded. "Yes, it's Magneto. Speaking of his plastic prison, we used high technology to cast it." When Mystique heard this, she secretly thought that Eric was in a bad situation, and he had to be rescued. "These photos look like school." Mystique then picked up the photo she was sitting on. "Yes, it is indeed a school, but they also have planes that can take off from the basketball court," Colonel Stryker introduced. Hearing this, the president fell silent, and Mystique was shocked when she heard the plane taking off from the basketball court, and she looked at the photo carefully. "Isn't this Professor X's mutant academy?" Thinking of this, she looked at Colonel Stryker with the same expression, compared to Senator Kelly who only knew how to clamor for being put into prison by mutants. The current Colonel Stryker is much more sinister. If he succeeds, the entire Mutant Academy will be destroyed. This is definitely not what Mystique wants to see. "Mr. President, I think we should do something." 35. Colonel Stryker said, looking at the president. Hearing this, the president did not rush to answer, but frowned and thought. He finally understood why Stryker would take the initiative to come to the door. After all, he did not invite Stryker today. Imagine how much New York people would be shocked if the army raided a school in New York for no reason. It's almost as loud as hating and the Hulk fight on the streets of New York. The military never goes through his president, and it is self-evident that Stryker came to him, obviously to make him resist this crime. It's fine if this is really a mutant academy, but if the intelligence is wrong, then he is probably the president. The president stood up and kept walking, struggling inside. On the one hand, he was attacked by mutants and almost lost his life, and he couldn't be indifferent to mutants for the sake of face. On the other hand, there is the risk of losing the position, and he had to take this charge. After all, there is a mutant training organization in New York, and this organization has this high-end weapon, but he, as the president, has no knowledge of it. He is also at risk of losing his position if things get out. Thinking of this, the president is very resentful of mutants for no reason. "Okay, Stryker, listen to me." After thinking for a long time, the president turned around firmly and said, "You can break into the academy to search, arrest, and interrogate people, but I don't want the bodies of mutant children in the news." In the face of the president's warning, Colonel Stryker didn't care. but instead showed a successful conspiracy smile. At the same time, in the Mutant Academy, Levi's received a message from Mystique inside the combat conference room. I think this attack was ordered by Magneto, and there was no one else but him. Knowing that there were mutants attacking the president, Cyclops' first thought was that Magneto did it. No, Scott, I don't think so. Jean Grey objected. You are wrong, Mr. Scott, Levi said, although Magneto has the ability to instruct this matter, but he will not do it, because it is unreasonable. Magneto will not make damage variants people's interests. Storm on the side nodded. She very much agreed with Levi's words. But even if it wasn't done by Magneto, this thing has a great impact on mutants. Who knows if there will be 5 or 6 people who support the mutant registration bill. Maybe worse, maybe the president will order the arrest of all mutants in New York. Polaris frowned. Your worries are not unreasonable, but don't worry, I already have a plan, Levi said with a smile. What's the plan? Polaris' eyes lit up when he saw his confident look. In fact, after learning that mutants attacked the president, Levi's understood what was going on. The so-called mutant attacking the president was just directed and acted by Colonel Stryker, and its purpose was to intensify the conflict between the president and the mutant, Zhao's, race. Stryker's son is also a mutant, but his wife committed suicide because of her son's mutant ability. So Stryker hates mutants very much, so he even experimented on his own son, transforming him into a mutant number 143. Using his son Jason's master illusion ability, he can manipulate others. In the original, even Magneto was hit. Stryker's purpose is to use his son Jason's ability to control Professor X, so as to exterminate mutants in the world. The idea is good, but still too naive. Thinking of this, Levi's had a playful smile on his face. What should he do with this guy who wants to destroy all mutants? Directly use space to move to assassinate? This seems to be too cheap for him. And the president also participated in this matter. Since the president does not want to see negative news in the newspapers, he must not be allowed to do so. My plan is to first find the mutant who assassinated the president and bring the mutant back. Levi spoke of the first steps in his plan. The task of bringing the mutants back will be handed over to Mrs. Olo and Mr. Scott. 99. No problem. Storm and Cyclops nodded at the same time. What about us? Polaris and Jean Grey asked suspiciously. You haven't arranged yet. Take care of the students. Levi's laughed. Okay then. The two nodded. At this moment, the door of the battle meeting room was opened. Hey, I didn't expect the professor to abdicate shortly after I left. Can anyone tell me what's going on? Seeing the person coming, everyone smiled. Welcome back, Logan. Storm was the first to get up to welcome. Welcome back to the team. Cyclops and Kin also welcomed with a smile. Welcome back, Uncle Logan. Levi's was also very happy to see Wolverine back. Chapter 69 Wolverine's Return. Wolverine's questioning. Please order first. Wolverine left the academy not long ago in search of her memory, and now she is finally back. Hey, boy, I don't remember where you were able to sit. After Logan found a seat and sat down, he looked closely at Levi's. Logan, this is the professor's decision, and also has the ability to lead us, Storm explained. Do you think so too? Logan looked back at Jean and Cyclops. Jean nodded and said, we have all seen the changes he has made to the academy during this time, and I think he will definitely be able to make the Mutant Academy better. Hearing Jean Grey say that, Logan turned his eyes to Cyclops again. Cyclops shrugged. I don't have a problem with Wuxiap as the leader of the X-Men. Seeing that Cyclops said so, Logan had no choice but to give up. Although he felt a little weird about a student being the leader of the X-Men, since everyone had no opinion, he also had no problem. But if Levi's didn't do well, he wouldn't listen. Uncle Logan, since you've come back, let's come together. 35 Levi's smiled and didn't care about Logan's doubts. Saying that, he left the combat conference room. When everyone saw this, they all followed. A group of people came to the brainwave strengthening room. Wait here now. If I use a brainwave intensifier to find the mutant who assassinated the president, Levi said and entered the brainwave strengthening room. Wait, Logan yelled and followed. The door of the brainwave strengthening room also closed. 487 at this time. What are you doing here, Uncle Logan? Levi's looked at Wolverine behind him strangely. I went to that place this time, but didn't find any memory, I think. Wolverine said here, and Levi's already knew what he was going to say. Uncle Logan, don't you understand why the professor didn't tell you, but let you find it yourself? Levi's asked rhetorically. Wolverine looked complicated. Uncle Logan, sometimes knowing the past is not a good thing. Wolverine's past Levi's is definitely very clear, but because it's very clear, he won't tell Wolverine. Because Wolverine's past was too bleak, and he lived so many years older than Professor X's age. Without a goal, I'm afraid Wolverine would have suicidal thoughts. That's one of the reasons Professor X didn't tell Wolverine. Wolverine suddenly became silent when she heard his words. Although she didn't know her past, she knew from his words that she was afraid that her past was not good. Uncle Logan, if you really want to understand the past, or even change the past, maybe I have a way. How? Wolverine looked up suddenly. I can take you back in time. Then let me go back now. Wolverine grabbed his shoulder excitedly. Don't be excited, Uncle Logan. I can let you go back in time, let you see what you've been through with your own eyes, and even let you change the future. 99. But you have to wait a while. 99. Levi's thought about it and decided to help Wolverine change the tragic past. After all, Wolverine is also a character he likes very much. Now that a living person is in front of him, and he also has this ability, then he definitely doesn't mind helping. Thanks. Although this remark made Logan feel a little weird, the wolf's intuition made him understand that Levi's was not lying. Okay, Uncle Logan, just wait by the side, I'm going to use the brainwave intensifier. After speaking, Levi's put on the helmet of a brainwave booster. In an instant, an extremely powerful telepathy enveloped the whole world. Amazingly, some red and white illusory figures appeared in the whole room. Logan looked at these figures with some confusion. This is the world of telepathy. The white ones are ordinary humans, and the red ones are mutants. Feeling Logan's thoughts, Levi's explained lightly. Look, Uncle Logan, we're not alone, and I'll even build a city full of mutants in the future. Logan was shocked when he heard this. He didn't expect that the guy in front of him, who was still a kid in his eyes, would have such ambitions. Even he was a little excited at the thought of a future city of mutants. Found it. At this moment, a small smile appeared at the corner of Levi's mouth, and then he opened his eyes. Come on, Uncle Logan. The two left the brainwave intensifier. What? Cyclops asked. Don't worry, I've found it, Levi said and tapped his finger in the air, and the next moment a map fell into his hand. Follow the map to find him. 55. Okay, Xb, let's go now. Cyclops took the map and set off with Storm. Vice, they all have missions. What about me? Asked Wolverine on the side. Levi's shrugged and said, not yet. Why don't you go and play with those students? After everything was arranged, he was also ready to leave. On the Skycarrier, in the S.H.I.E.L.D. director's office, Nick Fury is working on the file. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the office. Hey, Chief. Levi's greeted Raw with a smile, and then sat down on the chair beside him. The sudden voice surprised Nick Fury, but he was still the head of the agent, and his expression didn't change. Mr. Vice, can you go through the main entrance next time? 55. I try my best. Levi smiled indifferently. Tell me, what are you doing here with me? Nick Fury didn't want to continue to struggle with this question. Hearing this, Levi's raised his eyebrows. The president was assassinated. Isn't anyone looking for trouble for you? 35. S.H.I.E.L.D's recent dealings with mutants is not so secretive, and if you want to come, you can find out. So he didn't believe that after the president was assassinated by mutants, S.H.I.E.L.D, who had contacts with mutants, would be fine. Nick Fury nodded admiringly when he heard his words. You guessed it. Someone did point out evidence of my recent close association with mutants in front of the president. 5. Then you are still so calm? Levi's looked at him in surprise. Should he say that this is the mentality of being a top agent? Calm down? I'll calm down with a hammer, Mom fake. If you let me know that this bastard did this, I'll blow his head off with my own hands. Nick Fury's sudden tantrum surprised Levi's. It seems that the head of the agent is not as good as he imagined. Maybe he was miserable. I do know the mastermind behind this time. Who is it? Magneto's mutant brotherhood? No, Magneto wouldn't do such an irrational thing. 39. Levi's shook his head. 2. Nick Fury still agrees with him because he has studied Magneto. Although Magneto will do anything for the purpose, he will not do anything that is detrimental to the mutants. This assassination was just directed and acted by Colonel Stryker. It's him. Why would he do this? Nick Fury had no doubts about his words, since he had intelligence himself. If it's really not what Magneto did, then it's most likely what he said. Why are there still few people in the ugly nation who want to exterminate mutants? Okay, so what are you going to do? I got information that Colonel Stryker is preparing to conduct a military operation against the Mutant Academy. Nick Fury shared what he just got. Levi snorted disdainfully. I heard that Mr. President doesn't want to see the body of a child in tomorrow's newspaper, and that a group of terrorists attacked a school, but was killed on the spot by the agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hearing this, Nick Fury instantly understood his plan. I think tomorrow's paper will be very exciting. The two smiled at each other. Chapter 70. Team up with the president to rescue Magneto. Night falls. Near the Mutant Academy, Phil Coulson has been ambushed here with dozens of agents. We can deal with the military people ourselves. Why should we ask the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. to help? Polaris asked with some doubts. Levi's couldn't help chuckling when he heard her words. It is absolutely fine to deal with the military with our ability, but once we kill the military, we will never have peace. After they are expected to kill the military will never, right? Stop there. Once mutants and humans go to war, it's a never-ending situation. Maybe Levi's has the ability to kill all mankind, but he would never do that. It's a different story with S.H.I.E.L.D. to take out the military guys. S.H.I.E.L.D. can find a reason, like there are terrorists attacking the school. At that time, let people forge the scene of the attack on the academy and the corpses of children all over the floor. I think the president would be pissed when he got this news. So that's what happened. Polaris nodded in understanding. Where's? At this moment, Shadowcat and the little naughty and the others came to him and asked, You guys, Go and pretend to be dead man later. Levi's rubbed his chin and said, the worse the death, the better. Shadowcat and Little Naughty looked at each other when they heard his words. What about us? At this time, Kin and Logan on the other side came over, and the two were very close to each other and looked a little ambiguous. Cyclops had always been very wary of Logan before, but this time after Cyclops was sent out on a mission, Jean and Logan had time to spend alone. It's no surprise that something will happen to the two of them. Seeing this, Levi's could only apologize to Cyclops in his heart. He really didn't mean to let Kin and Logan get along alone. Just considering that Kin had just exploded with the power of the Phoenix, if she was stimulated outside and ran wild, I'm afraid no one would be able to stop her. That's why I didn't let Kin go out on a mission. But I also have to say that Westerner's feelings are too lustful. Kin is Cyclops' girlfriend for many years. Is it really okay to flirt with Logan again? Definitely, he will not say these words, and he has no interest in paying attention to the love triangle between the three. Uncle Logan, you and Teacher Kin will arrange to do makeup for the students. To make tomorrow's newspaper appear the scene of the school being attacked and the corpses of children all over the floor. It still needs the cooperation of these students. Okay then. Logan and Jin nodded, then turned and left to prepare for the kids' makeup. In fact, Phil Coulson has arranged for professional makeup artists to help in this regard, and they only need to appease the children. Come on, 35. At this time, Levi's looked at the night sky. The dark environment did not affect his vision. Even at night he could clearly see objects thousands of meters away. This is the strengthening that evolution brings to the body. Thunderbird is like this, and his evolution is obviously stronger. Hearing his words, everyone followed his gaze. After a while, several armed helicopters appeared in the sky and flew towards them. At least an armed team of hundreds of people. Phil Coulson's eyes became dignified. This time their S.H.I.E.L.D. only dispatched hundreds of agents, and the number of the two sides was similar. But the military's weapons and equipment are obviously better than their S.H.I.E.L.D. If the two sides fight, I'm afraid it will be a lose-lose ending. Don't worry, I will help at that time, and make sure that none of your S.H.I.E.L.D. agents will lose. 35. Levi's promised. That's good. Phil Coulson finally breathed a sigh of relief when he got this promise. Several armed helicopters finally stopped in the open space outside the academy. Obviously, the military people did not want to be alarmed. Immediately afterwards, soldiers gathered in the open space in an orderly manner from the helicopter. Phil Coulson, do it. After Levi's finished speaking, his eyes flashed, and the next moment all the military soldiers here were controlled. Next, you only need to control these people to cooperate in a play. Phil Coulson waved to the agents behind him after hearing this, and then the agents attacked without hesitation. For a while, gunshots rang out. From outside the academy to inside the academy, the whole academy is filled with the smell of gunpowder. Levi's watched with satisfaction, all plans under his control. Beside him, a controlled newspaper reporter has recorded all this. Vice, what should we do next? At this moment, Jean and Logan came over. Levi's folded his arms and smiled. Let the children wash up and go to bed early. Classes will continue as usual tomorrow. Kin and Logan immediately looked at each other when they heard the words. Tonight's plan was very successful, but the only thing that puzzled him was that Colonel Stryker didn't come. But it doesn't matter, this can only make him live a few more days temporarily. At this time Phil Coulson came over and said, Mr. Vice, I have to say that you have a very good plan. I think ... the president will definitely know about tomorrow's report. It will definitely explode with anger. Ha ha ha. Levi's took his words and laughed. Phil Coulson couldn't help laughing at this. Then it's up to you to handle the S.H.I.E.L.D. Seeking flowers. Don't worry, we'll take care of what's next. Phil Coulson nodded. This matter can be regarded as tying S.H.I.E.L.D. with the Mutant Academy, so their S.H.I.E.L.D. must deal with this matter well. Wait until Phil Coulson cleans the field and leaves. Levi's took out the phone and called Mystique. Mystique had previously planned to rescue Magneto after telling him the military was going to attack the Mutant Academy. I don't know if it is successful now. He just remembered that it seemed that Colonel Stryker had arranged a trap in the prison. If Mystique isn't careful, there's a good chance she'll be ambushed. Doodle. The phone went unanswered for a long time, and Levi frowned. What's wrong? Polaris asked involuntarily when he saw his frown. Mystique's phone went unanswered. It looks like something is wrong. You mean Magneto? Polaris couldn't help but look worried. Yes, it seems that Magneto's prison has already been controlled by Stryker, and Mystique has probably fallen into the hands of Colonel Stryker. Levi's explained. Vice, I want to ask you something. At this time, Professor X came out in a wheelchair. Professor, please speak. Although my old friend is a bit unscrupulous, he is also thinking of mutants. I want to ask you to save him. Professor X asked with a serious face. Definitely no problem. Levi's agreed without hesitation. What did he think it was? Even if Professor X didn't say it, he would have rescued Magneto. After all, Magneto is not only the leader of the Mutant Brotherhood, but also the father of Polaris, and he can't just stand by. I'll go with you. Polaris stood beside him, and us. Clarice and Naughty and Shadowcat and Lauren all stood up. I think you should go back to sleep obediently now, Levi said helplessly. No, although we all know that Vice, your ability is very strong. But you can't put everything on yourself, and occasionally we can help. Little Naughty said firmly. Yes, our ability is also very strong. Shadowcat agrees with the Little Naughty words very much. Well then, 35 Levi's nodded helplessly. Since they said so, they can only bring a few people. Before Logan and Jin didn't come, Levi's pulled Polaris and then disappeared in place after a space move. Mountain. Chapter 71. The dead woman is called the Master. Please order first. Outside the military prison, Levi's and Polaris, Little Naughty, Clarice, and Shadowcat and Lauren 6, pop up here. Seeing the heavily defended military base, the children couldn't help frowning. With such a strict defense, it was impossible to sneak in. But they are here to help. If they are stumped at the first level, what's the point of them following? Levi's wanted to say that he could easily take them in, whether it was telepathy or invisibility and other abilities that would allow them to easily enter the prison. However, seeing how they were discussing with great interest, he did not speak. Soon a few people discussed it. Polaris came to him and told their plan. Through our discussion, we decided to quietly get the soldiers patrolling outside, and then enter the prison to rescue Magneto. Levi's raised her eyebrows involuntarily at her words. The plan looked simple and rude, and there was nothing bright about it. However, considering that their abilities are limited, it is not like he has abilities such as invisibility, space movement, etc. So this 487 simple and crude plan is also the most effective. This plan is not bad, then let's start action. Well, Vice, wait a moment. Seeing his agreement, Polaris immediately put a smile on his face. Then they started to act. I saw a few people move quickly, and soon approached the soldiers at the door handle. Polaris controlled the 2 iron beads and instantly knocked out the guarding soldiers. Immediately afterwards, Shadowcat led a few people through the wall and silently entered inside. Seeing this one space move, Levi's followed a few people. Katie, Lauren, let's do it together, Polaris whispered to Shadowcat and Lauren. The two nodded when they heard the words. Immediately after they cooperated with each other, the Polaris manipulator's marbles kept knocking out the soldiers guarding several corners. Shadowcat, on the other hand, uses ability shuttle objects to come behind soldiers and knock them out. Lauren manipulated water molecules to form water balls and shoot them out. However, although Polaris was very careful, they were still discovered by patrolling soldiers. There's no other way, I have to force it. Seeing the iron beads flying out of his hand, Polaris instantly knocked out the last few guarding soldiers. All the guarding soldiers settled. Where is the prison? I see, over there. The Little Naughty, who had never joined the fight, pointed in one direction. Because she couldn't help, she looked around early in the morning and quickly found the location of the military prison. Okay, let's go, Polaris called raw, and then several people quickly walked towards the prison. It was not until they entered the prison that Polaris and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Hey, ladies, are not the time to relax. But leave it to me. Levi's instantly appeared in front of the girls and laughed. Seeing him come and go freely like this, the children are a little helpless. They worked so hard to get into prison, but they didn't expect Levi's to be as simple as eating and drinking, which really made people feel powerless. Seeing that they were a little dejected, Levi's smiled and comforted. You have done a good job. I believe you will be able to be on your own in the future. After all, I am not always by your side. 5. But if I'm here, you can just trust me. Vice. Seeing him with a handsome smile on his face, all the Polaris and the others were moved. Why is there such a handsome man in the world? Okay, let's go. The people who greet us have come, Levi's said, and turned to look on the other side of the prison passage. They saw a woman in a suit and 2 prison guards with guns standing in front of them. Bang bang. The 2 guards with guns fired without hesitation, and they didn't stop until one of the magazines emptied them. However, all the bullets stopped in front of Levi's. It wasn't him who shot, but the Polaris shot by the side, and she waved her hand. The next moment all the bullets were shot back, and the 2 prison guards were shot into a hornet's nest in an instant. But when the bullet hit the woman in the suit, it didn't let her fall down. I saw that the bullet shot into her body was automatically squeezed out. Death Girl? Levi's looked at the woman in the suit in surprise. If I remember correctly, this woman is the mutant controlled by Colonel Stryker. It is super healing and adamantium alloy bones, and can extend claws longer than Wolverine. It can be said that the dead woman is a replica of Wolverine. Even Wolverine is no match for the original. At this moment, the dead woman showed her slender claws and rushed towards them. The same guy as Wolverine. Polaris showed a disdainful smile, then she stretched out one hand, and the next moment the dead girl was hanged in the air. In the face of this metal mutant, North Star is their nemesis. Awesome. The Little Naughty and Shadowcat on the side couldn't help but praised when they saw this. Small idea. Polaris was a little smug. But what is this guy going to do? Clarice asked suspiciously, looking at the dead girl floating in the sky. This. Or just kill her? Polaris said while rubbing his chin. No. Levi's shook his head to deny her this idea. The death girl is just being controlled by Stryker. Let me try. Maybe I can make her back to normal. Okay then. Hearing him say that, Polaris nodded and put the dead woman down. The dead woman who was put down rushed over again, but was controlled by Levi's telepathy. He checked the memory of the dead woman. The death woman is a woman with black hair, seemingly weak but beautiful, with a ponytail. Her father was Colonel Stryker's assistant and was one of the leaders of the Wolverine renovation project. However, after the success of the Wolverine transformation plan at that time, it was killed by Stryker. And she was also used as the next experimental subject. After seeing what happened to the dead woman, Levi's was deeply sympathetic. Unexpectedly, this is one of the people who was trapped by Stryker. Then he recovered the memory of the dead woman. Stryker, kill you. Kill you. The death girl who had just woken up roared, and then grabbed it towards Levi's. Obviously, the killing intent in her heart made her unable to tell who was who. After a long period of control, at the moment the dead woman's brain has been damaged beyond recognition. Levi's frowned and controlled her again. It seems that in order for her to return to normal, she must modify her memory. Thinking of this, he slightly modified the memory of the dead woman. When the dead woman woke up again, it became much quieter. "Owner!" The dead woman shouted respectfully after seeing Levi's in front of her. "Owner!" The North Star and the little naughty next to them were all shocked by a roar, and then they stared at him tightly, waiting for his explanation. Cough that. Maybe there is something wrong with her memory. Levi's was also caught off guard. He didn't instill such a memory into the dead girl just now. Just as he was about to continue revising his memory for the dead woman, the surrounding walls suddenly began to tremble. Immediately afterwards, countless steel bars in the wall were stabbed like sharp knives. "Be careful," Levi's reminded, and then used electromagnetic force to control the steel bars. "What's going on?" Clarice and Lauren and the others went to play and didn't know what was going on. "Is it Magneto?" Polaris frowned as he looked at the steel bars drilled out of the wall. Except for Magneto, she couldn't think of anyone else who could control steel. At this moment, Magneto came out from the other side of the passage. "Really, Magneto? What's the matter?" "Magneto, we're here to save you." Naughty and Shadowcat looked at Magneto in confusion and shouted. "Stop shouting, it's useless. Magneto has been controlled by Stryker." Levi's frowned. He had no idea that Magneto would be controlled. It stands to reason that Jason's master of illusions can only create environments. But that's the end of the matter, and we can only talk about subduing Magneto first. It was at this moment that countless steel rushed towards them behind the Magneto manipulator. The entire passage was occupied, and there was no room to dodge at all. Seeing this, Levi's waved one hand, and an ice wall instantly blocked all the steel. Immediately after he used space to move behind Magneto, telepathy instantly invaded Magneto's mind. Chapter 72 Yuriko. Levi's almost died. Sure enough, Magneto is having a nightmare. In the dream, Magneto saw that all the mutants in the world were wiped out. Even his daughter Polaris and his old friend Charles died in front of him, leaving him alone. Levi's backed away when he saw this, and it seemed that the dream had controlled him. "Magneto, wake up." He uses telepathy to break Magneto's dream. In a trance, Magneto finally woke up. "Thanks." He looked at Levi's in front of him with a complicated expression, and then thanked him softly. "Don't worry, I'll never let what happened in your dreams happen," Levi's reassured. Hearing this, Magneto finally managed to let out a smile. "Vice, are you alright?" After the ice wall was opened, several people from Polaris hurried over. Hearing Polaris' words, Magneto's heart is sour. The person being controlled is me, so he won't care about me? Besides, can I hurt this kid with my strength? Looking at Magneto's somewhat resentful eyes, Levi's mouth twitched. But it was only at this moment that Magneto let go of the burden in his heart and had a fatherly feeling. You should ask Magneto if he is injured. How could anyone hurt me with my strength? Levi's waved his hand pointedly. Magneto, who was on the side, heard this, and secretly thought that this kid was interested. When Polaris heard this, he couldn't help but look at Magneto, but he didn't say anything of concern. This leaves Magneto a little lost. "Okay, let's find Mystique first, and then kill Colonel Stryker." 39 Levi's turned to look at the prison and said. Magneto shook his head and said, "Raven should be in there. But William Stryker isn't here." "Not here?" 99 Levi's frowned when he heard this. This old guy is really cunning, and he is not here. So where is he? Suddenly he thought of a place. That is the base that Colonel Stryker built at the Alec Lake Hydroelectric Power Station in the original book. Where is his base camp, but also his research institute? If Stryker is not here, then it must be the... Thinking of this, Levi's didn't waste time searching the prison with a few people. Soon they found the dying Mystique. "Raven." Magneto saw Mystique lying on the ground and helped her up a little anxiously. "But I saw that Mystique had been shot multiple times in the chest and was bleeding profusely. If it wasn't for Mystique's own strong healing ability, I'm afraid she would have died from excessive blood loss. Don't worry, Magneto, let me come." Seeing Magneto's excitement shaking the entire prison, Levi's hurried forward. "Can you save her?" Magneto looked at him with red eyes. Mystique can be said to be the person who has followed him the longest, and there is an inexplicable relationship between the two. If Mystique died because of him, he would absolutely go crazy. Trust me, no problem. Levi's replied seriously. Magneto chose to believe him, and put Mystique back on the ground. Levi's didn't ink it either, using molecular manipulation directly to start healing the wounds in Mystique's body. In just a moment, all the gunshot wounds on Mystique's body returned to normal. Thank you, Magneto thanked. Let's wake her up quickly, he said with a smile. Called by Magneto's roar, Mystique quickly recovered. Eric, I thought I would never see you again. Mystique sighed when he woke up. During the time of her life, Mystique thought a lot, and the one she wanted to see most was Magneto and Professor X. Don't worry, we still have a lot of time to meet in the future, Magneto said with red eyes. Cough. Okay, let's go back first and talk about it. Hearing what they said gave goosebumps. Levi's said he couldn't watch it anymore. The Shadowcat and the little naughty next to him couldn't help but smile when they saw him being uncomfortable. Hearing him say that, Magneto and Mystique were embarrassed to go on. Immediately afterwards, under Levi's spatial movement, the group returned to the Mutant Academy in the blink of an eye. What happened here in Vice? Magneto frowned as he looked at the academy full of gunpowder smoke. Oh. Don't worry, it's just a play. Levi's waved his hand indifferently. You are back. At this time, Cyclops and Logan also greeted them. Mr. Scott, is your mission still going well? Levi's asked curiously, seeing that Cyclops and Storm had both returned. Don't worry, we've brought the mutant back, Storm replied with a smile. Well done. Levi's nodded with satisfaction. In fact, he was still somewhat interested in Nightcrawler, a mutant with the same blue skin as Mystique. I remember that according to the information, Nightcrawler is the son of Mystique and the Red Devil, but it seems that Mystique has a leg with Magneto and Professor X. But Mystique doesn't have Professor X or Magneto's son. This made him a little confused, but he didn't think much about it. He could only say that the circle of Westerners was really messed up. Did Vice deal with Stryker? 35. Then Logan asked. For some reason, he had a special feeling for the name Stryker, and every time the name was called, there was an inexplicable anger in his heart. Levi's shook his head. No, this old guy is more cunning than he thought. 99. Logan couldn't help frowning when he heard this. But it doesn't matter, I already know that guy's lair. I'll just go and deal with him now. Although it is already early in the morning, he has always avenged his revenge immediately, otherwise he might not be able to sleep. Vice, you have to take me with you on this matter. When Logan heard this, he was able to find Stryker immediately, and immediately grabbed his shoulder. And me? He almost killed Raven. I should settle the account with him. Magneto on the side also said that he would go together. Eric, leave this to young people to do. 39. At this time, Professor X also came over in a wheelchair. Professor hasn't slept yet. Levi smiled and called Draw. Humphrey. Charles, you're old. But I'm not old. Magneto snorted, looking unconvinced. Ah. Well then. Seeing his stubborn appearance, Levi's couldn't refuse. Okay, you all come to me. Logan held onto his shoulder with a firm look on his face, while Magneto put his hand on his shoulder. Then Mystique grabbed Magneto. We're going too. Polaris and the little naughty people also got together. Hey, forget it, it's getting late, and if you don't sleep, you'll get wrinkles. 35. Levi's didn't plan to bring so many people. Originally, this time, he could go alone for this task. It would be nice to go early and return early and then sleep comfortably. Besides, the big night 487 is not for outings, it takes so many people to join in the fun. Hearing what he said, the Polaris and the others had no choice but to give up. Master, please bring Yuriko. At this moment, a voice made everyone stunned. When everyone looked at the person who was speaking, they were suddenly puzzled. Who is this woman? Storm asked suspiciously. The corners of Levi's mouth twitched slightly, but he was actually called the Master. He only felt that some society died. This man is a mutant controlled by Stryker. You modified her memory to make her your. Logan raised his eyebrows, the meaning of which was self-evident. Levi's face darkened when he heard his words. Uncle Logan, it seems that you don't want to go to Stryker. No. When I didn't say it. Logan looked away. Vice, telepathy can't be used at will. Professor X decided that he should teach him the principles of telepathy. Otherwise, the child may go astray. Seeing what Professor X said, Levi's face darkened even more. Okay, don't talk about it. This is just an accident. It was Polaris who stood up to speak for him, which surprised everyone. Polaris knew him very well, and he didn't even want to send it to the door himself, so how could he play this kind of game with a policewoman? I don't think it's bad, but let's get down to business now. Magneto spoke. Levi's didn't bother to explain what everyone had misunderstood. Let's go. 35. Before the words fell, the four of them disappeared in front of everyone. Chapter 73. Signing in. Jason, the Illusionist. In the dark night, next to the acrylic lake water power station, four figures suddenly appeared. Is this the last Stryker base? How are we going to get in? Magneto asked. Definitely. In fact, what he wanted to ask was whether he could directly use the space to move in as he did just now. Let me find their location. 35. Levi said, using telepathy to find soldiers or researchers inside the acrylic lake hydroelectric power station. His spatial movement can instantly reach any place that he has been to or is within sight. Now he must have no view of the inside of the power station. But it doesn't matter, using telepathy to manipulate a person can get vision. Found it. 99. The next moment, the four disappeared again. In the research room inside the acrylic lake hydropower station, a soldier is taking a nap. Suddenly, four people silently appeared in front of the soldiers. This ability is really convenient. Looking around, Logan couldn't help but sigh. At this time, the soldier also woke up in a daze because of his words. But what awaited him was Logan's claws. Where are we going to start looking? Mystique wondered. No, just wait a moment. When he first came in, he had quietly used telepathy to control all the people in this laboratory, and now he only needs to control them to gather together. That's the horror of telepathy. It is invisible substance, and can't stop its intrusion anywhere. If there is no way to resist, you can only become a manipulated puppet. When Mystique and Magneto heard this, they seemed to understand something. Only Logan was more impatient. Soon, the soldiers and researchers in the experimental base all came out one after another. Finally came out Stryker, the culprit of all this. Levi snapped his fingers, and everyone woke up. But their bodies had been immobilized by the spiritual cues. Colonel Stryker didn't expect to wake you up so late. Levi's looked at Stryker with a playful expression. At this time, Stryker was still a little confused. Stryker, I never thought we would meet here. Tilda. Magneto on the side also made a friendly gesture. Raw. However, after seeing him, Stryker suddenly shivered. Magneto, why are you here? Stryker looked at Magneto in horror. You almost killed Raven. I will settle the account with you. 35. Magneto lowered his head and looked at him indifferently. Stryker's whole body trembled when he heard this. What are you still doing? Hurry up and save me. 99. Stryker shouted angrily when he saw the soldiers behind him. However, these soldiers, like him, were given spiritual cues and couldn't move at all. Stryker, do you remember me? Logan grabbed Stryker's collar roughly and lifted him up. You're Wolverine? Stryker looked at the familiar face in front of him, and finally remembered who he was. Tell me, what the hell did you do to me? And, who the hell am I? Logan growled at him. Ha ha Tilda, you are just a failure. Now Stryker has also given up. He knows that he is dead today. You guys play first. I'll leave for a while. At this time Levi said something, and then left here. He has no interest in watching Logan press Stryker. Now he is most interested in Stryker's son, a mutant named Jason, whose ability is master illusion. Under the guidance of telepathy, after a while, he came to a place that was the same as the brainwave strengthening room of the Mutant Academy. However, there was no one in the brainwave strengthening room. Levi's was stunned for a moment. He had just felt that Jason was here. Is it illusion? He thought of this possibility, and then he used telepathy to instantly destroy the opponent's illusion. The whole cottage version of the brainwave strengthening room appeared in front of him, and the mutant Jason was sitting in the center of the brainwave strengthening room. Is this an illusion? It's really interesting. The corners of Levi's mouth twitched slightly, and then he checked in Jason. Ding. Did the host check in the mutant Jason? Yes. Sign me in. Ding. Sign-in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability illusion. With 100 experience points, illusion is an ability that can create large-scale illusions, which can make people fall into hallucinations without realizing it. In fact, telepathy can also create hallucinations, but Jason's ability to control Professor X with the help of drugs is enough to prove that his illusion is not simple. In terms of illusion, it is still much stronger than telepathy. Getting a nice ability, Levi's mouth slightly curled, very satisfied. Then he turned around and walked out of the brainwave strengthening room, but before leaving, he still ended Jason's life. This guy is also a poor man. Because he is a mutant, his further Stryker is used as an experimental object, making him look like a ghost. And his brain has also been damaged, and there is no possibility of recovery at all. Even alive is equivalent to a vegetative state. It's better than dying. Back to Logan and Magneto their side. At the moment things are almost over here. All the soldiers and researchers were pierced by steel bars drilled out of the wall, and Stryker had been tortured into a human form. Levi's took one look, not interested in taking a second look. Let's go back when we're done. Okay, but let me do one last thing. 35. Magneto agreed, then raised his hands. The next moment the entire power station trembled. Okay, let's go. After all this, Magneto came over and put it on his shoulder. What have you done? Feeling the whole power station shaking, Levi's was a little stunned. Just moved some hands and feet, Magneto said nonchalantly. Seeing this, Levi's doesn't know what Magneto has done. Apparently he wants to destroy this place. But it doesn't matter, it will be destroyed if it is destroyed. Grabbing Logan, who was a little lost, the four of them appeared outside the acrylic lake water power station in the next moment. Rumbling. A deafening sound came, and the entire power station began to crumble. In just a moment, the entire power station was washed away by the flood. For Qianzhou, the acrylic lake hydropower station that has been standing for many years has finally become history here. Levi's couldn't help stretching. It's finally over. We can finally go back to sleep with your maid? Mystique teased. Levi's curled his lips when he heard the words. I hope you can treat Lorna well. I'm sorry for her. 35 Magneto looked at him tightly and said, Word. Levi's was speechless. So he gave his daughter to him? I think you have a lot of energy. But you have to be nice to Lorna, Magneto urged sternly. Hearing this, he was even more speechless. He curled his lips and said, Magneto, don't worry about this kind of thing. Maybe I really don't have the right to say that, Magneto said with a somewhat lonely expression. Abandoning his daughter is always an indisputable fact. Even if he is quibbling about it is useless. Chapter 74 Mr. President is so angry. Levi's patted him on the shoulder and said, work hard. I think Lorna will forgive you sooner or later. Although Magneto has indeed abandoned the North Star for so many years, it is still good for the North Star from a starting point. Although Polaris doesn't think so. However, through his recent observations, the North Star is actually not as ruthless as Magneto imagined. Magneto finally recovered a little when he heard this. By the way, I want to ask, how is our plan? Hearing the positive question, Levi's couldn't help showing a happy smile. The experiment is progressing very well, and I believe that the machine will be successful soon. This is also thanks to his painstaking efforts to find doctors in, so the progress of the experiment will be accelerated. Magneto looked at him with admiration and said, Vice, I really didn't see you wrong. Hearing this, he pouted, and said in his heart, come on, it's your function that I have such a strong feeling. Okay, we should go back. Levi's is not in the mood to continue talking here. Soon the four returned to the Mutant Academy. 487. The next day, when Levi's was still sleeping comfortably in bed, in the White House Supreme Leader's office, Mr. President is already sitting at his desk and getting busy. The matter of the mutant assassination of the president has been spread, and now he can only drive ducks to the shelves and make some policies for mutants. While he was busy, the secretary hurried in. Mr. President, something is bad. 35. What happened? The president frowned at him. This is today's report. The secretary general didn't dare to delay, and hurriedly handed over the newspaper in his hand. The president took the newspaper and read it. The caption above reads, Terrorists attack a school in New York, students and teachers killed in school. 3. The president had a bad feeling when he saw this title, and then he read it. Just last night, there was a horrific terrorist attack in New York. A well-armed terrorist attacked an ordinary school, killing a large number of students. Just seeing this beginning, the president's face turned hideous. The last thing he wanted to happen still happened, and it was more serious than he had imagined, because the newspaper clearly captured the miserable picture of the whole school. Fake, William, this is what you did. The president growled in a low voice with a grim expression. The secretary general beside him was startled by his appearance. Then the president called William Stryker, who desperately needed an explanation. Beep tilde. However, the phone was not connected for a long time. Mommy fake. The president angrily smashed his phone to the ground. Mr. President, something is bad. 35. At this time, Secretary Number 2 also hurried in. When he saw the president's grim expression, he was too frightened to speak. Come on, there's nothing worse now. The president finally regained some sanity. It's the acrylic lake water power station. What happened to the power station? The president scolded angrily. The power station has collapsed. What? When the president heard the news, he was instantly stunned. You must know that the Acrylic Lake Hydropower Station is one of the most important power stations in New York. Now that it suddenly collapses when it says it collapses, the economic loss it will bring to New York is inestimable. And the Acrylic Lake Hydropower Station is Stryker's research base. What is going on? Thinking of this, Mr. President slumped on the seat directly, and it seemed that he was in a bad position. He can already imagine being ousted by angry capitalists. S.H.I.E.L.D. The president suddenly remembered the Homeland Strategic Attack and Defense Logistics Agency mentioned in the newspaper. Isn't this S.H.I.E.L.D.? S.H.I.E.L.D. was involved in this and took out the military. Thinking of this, the president immediately made a phone call. Even if he stepped down, he would not make S.H.I.E.L.D. better. The call was quickly connected. Nick Fury, do I need your explanation? As soon as the call was connected, Nick Fury heard a growl from the president, but he was not surprised because he was prepared. Mr. President, I don't understand what you mean. Do you still want to pretend to be garlic? You should have read the newspaper this morning. The president suppressed his inner anger. Oh. It turns out that this is the matter. We S.H.I.E.L.D. just solved a group of terrorists, and it is not worthy of the president's praise, Nick Fury said calmly. Hearing this, the president was about to be pissed off. You know I'm not complimenting you, and you shouldn't recognize that it's from the military. Or have you colluded with mutants? Mr. President, you can't talk nonsense. I just dealt with some terrorists, but I didn't see any military people. Nick Fury is still the answer. Nick Fury, don't think you don't know about your collusion with mutants if you don't admit it. Even if I step down, it won't make you feel better. The president gritted his teeth. Hearing this, Nick Fury didn't want to pretend. After all, the rabbit is in a hurry and bites. He needs to step aside from all these responsibilities. Mr. President, in fact, the mastermind behind the last mutant assassination incident was Colonel William Stryker, and this attack on the school was also his plan. Nick Fury didn't go on here, because smart people already know what he's trying to say. Stryker is dead anyway, and this matter only needs to be all blamed on him. In this case, the president may be able to escape. Definitely, if the president has to get revenge on him. S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury is not worried at all. After all, their S.H.I.E.L.D's boss is the World Security Council, and the presidency is not in their hands. Hang up the phone. The president slumped on the chair and his color kept changing, and then he gritted his teeth and immediately decided to throw the blame on Colonel Stryker. And the collapse of the Acrylic Lake hydropower station has to be left to Stryker. After all, it is Stryker's research base, and it is inseparable from the other party in terms of emotion and reason. Mutant Academy. When Levi's got a call from Nick Fury, he couldn't help showing a big smile. It seems that this should give Mr. President a good lesson. Chapter 75. Sign-in. Perspective. Tony's banquet invitation. Today is the weekend. Because there was no class, Levi's slept until noon before slowly getting up. Several days have passed since the last incident, and the president has also been slapped hard by him. Definitely, he doesn't care about the follow-up. Morning. As soon as he went out, he ran into Lauren, and he raised his hand and greeted Raw with a smile. It's almost noon and it's still early. Lauren couldn't help but gave him a nice look. Levi smiled indifferently. I see you in a hurry. What are you going to do? It's Mr. Scott who organized everyone to repair the damaged place in the college. I'll go see if I can help. 5. Oh. That's right. He suddenly realized that play that night, but it was all real. Many parts of the college were damaged, so Cyclops organized everyone to repair it early this morning. Anyway, so many days have passed since this incident, and there are no ordinary people in the Mutant Academy, so even if the Academy is repaired, it is not afraid of being discovered. Then I'll go with you too. Levi's thought about it and prepared to help. Yeah, Lauren readily agreed. Then the two chatted and laughed and came to the school gate. Under the organization of Cyclops, there are already many students here who are repairing the damaged area. However, because these students were the first to do this kind of work, it was a little difficult to repair. Vice, you're here too. Polaris and the little naughty are also here to help, and they are happy to say Raw when they see him coming. Levi's nodded to them, then came over to Cyclops. I said, Mr. Scott, can't you hire some professional people to restore the college? 35. With some obsessive-compulsive disorder, he just can't stand things being tinkered with by students. I think so too, but it's very easy to expose the intelligence inside the academy. Cyclops spread his hands a little helplessly. It is good to invite professional people to repair the academy, but it also increases the risk of exposure, not only the problem of mutants, but also the problem of the last military attack. When Levi's heard this, he wanted to say that he could let Teacher Ken use telepathy, as long as the other party's memory was erased afterwards. But after thinking about it, he still didn't say that. After all, the super ability of using telepathy is still a bit sensitive, and no one wants the thoughts in their minds to be known by others. Forget it, I'll help too. Levi's thought about it and decided to do it himself. He snapped his fingers and then went all out with molecular manipulation. As far as the line of sight can be seen, whether it is the ground, the steps, or the fountain, all slowly recover as before. This scene shocked everyone. Wow, that's awesome. What kind of super ability is this? It's too powerful. As expected of the boss, too strong. 35. Seeing that the school was back to normal, the students suddenly screamed in shock. When can I become so powerful? Lauren looked envious. During this period, she also worked very hard to train her substructure ability, and only she would know how difficult it is to repair damaged buildings on a large scale. Okay, everything is repaired, let's do our own thing. Levi's waved his hand. Seeing this, the students all ran away happily, because they were forcibly pulled over by Cyclops to do coolies. Well done. Cyclops raised his eyebrows in admiration. Just a little thing. Levi smiled nonchalantly. Repairing these things was just a matter of convenience for him. Cyclops turned to leave. He had other things to do. Hey, kid, what are you doing here? At this time, Levi suddenly saw a little girl squatting motionless in the corner, not knowing what to do. The little girl turned her head to look at him and said, I have something fallen in. Levi's heard the words and saw that there was a crack in the corner of the wall, and it seemed that the little girl's thing had fallen into it. In that place? Brother, bring it out for you. 35. Right here. The little girl pointed to the ground. What? Levi's was a little surprised, because the position the little girl pointed to was a little far from the gap. It's okay, look at me. Saying that, he stretched out his hand to catch it. Behind him, Lauren and Polaris were all smiling and watching him help the little girl pick up things. A little on the left ... and a little below ... Yes, that's where. Under the command of the little girl, Levi's finally fished out the thing. It looks like a glass bead. Thank you. The little girl thanked the glass beads very happily and ran away. Levi's looked at the little girl suddenly a little puzzled. The little girl seemed to be able to see things underground. It's not her command. I'm afraid that if I want to get the glass beads, I have to use some violence. Thinking of this, he directly signed the little girl. Ding. Did the host check in with the mutant Elena? Yes. Ding. Sign-in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability perspective, with 100 experience points. It turned out to be perspective. No wonder the little girl can see things underground. Seeking flowers. Levi suddenly realized. Today is the weekend, come with me to New York to play. 39. At this time, the little naughty ran over and hugged his arm. Now only he can let the little naughty make such an intimate action. At the moment, Levi subconsciously used perspective, and then turned to look at the little naughty. The next moment, a naked Ares approached. Cough that. Where are you going to play? Levi's coughed dryly and answered calmly, but he secretly thought that little naughty clothes are really big. They are really white. Definitely go to New York. Don't think I don't know, you took Lorna alone last time. The little naughty was a little unhappy when he said that. After all, she knew Levi's before Polaris. Hearing this, Levi's subconsciously looked at the smiling Polaris. 0. Cough. 99. It seems to be bigger than a little naughty. Vice. Do you have a cold? Lauren came over and said with concern. This is not too small. Levi's was a little confused for a while, and after a while, he turned off the perspective with strong willpower. I'm fine. Just a little thirsty. He waved his hand and tried to pretend to be very calm, secretly thinking that this ability must not be known to others. I have water here. Clarice, who had not spoken, handed over a bottle of water. Levi's took a sip without opening it. Beep. Just then his phone rang. I picked it up and saw that it was Tony Stark. Hey, is there anything Uncle Tony wants from me? Hey, man, didn't you ask me to treat you to a drink last time? I'll have a party here tomorrow night. Banquet? Definitely no problem. I'll be there in time. 99. Levi's agreed as soon as he heard it was a banquet, and he also wanted to see Tony's luxurious life. Speaking of which, Iron Man is also his favorite Marvel character. Remember in Avengers 2, Scarlet Witch Wanda used the power of the mind on Thor, Tony, Captain Steve, and Black Widow to allow them to see what they feared the most. What Black Widow sees is the bad memories of her past. Captain Steve saw a picture of everyone celebrating after the end of World War II, and Carter told him that the war was over, but Steve felt that everything was unnatural. What Thor sees is as good becoming hell. It can be said that what the three of them see is related to themselves. If you like this audiobook, subscribe the channel for more videos like this. And join my Patreon if you want to support me. Link is in the description. Leave some comment and let me know if you guys like this story, or you have a web novel you like and want to hear its audiobook. I will be happy to create them for you. Please like, share, and leave a comment on the video.